I had a piece of good news and a piece of bad news. The good news was that even though I had transmigrated 200 years into the future to a post-apocalyptic wasteland, I had a cheat code. Civilization was broken, resources were scarce, and radiation-mutated monsters roamed the ruins, but I had the power to stop time. The bad news? I could only stop it for 1 minute. 1 minute a day. That wasn't even enough time to soak a bowl of instant noodles. The only saving grace was that this time could be accumulated. If I didn't use my minute today, I'd have 2 minutes tomorrow. Bang! The roar of a gunshot shattered my thoughts, followed immediately by a wave of savage cheering. I looked up. I was in the central square of Cindertown, a settlement of about 800 people. Bright red lamps illuminated a crowd of swaying bodies, their shadows dancing like demons in the dark. "Another one dead," someone yelled. "That's the third one. These savages never get tired of it." I stretched my stiff limbs and shifted my weight. The iron shackles around my ankles let out a crisp, metallic clink. That was my current reality. I wasn't just a spectator. I was a slave to these brutes. In the center of the square, a young man in a floral shirt sat at a table, a cigarette dangling from his lips. Opposite him sat a corpse with a hole blown through its head. The dead man's hand was still gripped around a strange revolver carved from white bone. Crimson patterns, shaped like writhing blood vessels, snaked across the gun's frame and extended onto the corpse's hand, rooting into the flesh like intravenous needles. With a sickening slurping sound, the revolver literally sucked the corpse dry, leaving behind a shriveled husk. "We won again," the men behind the floral shirt cheered. Magician Li Yao won 3 rounds in a row. Just a few more, and he'll meet the containment conditions for the breath of sea bone. While the West District celebrated, the people from the East District, my side, remained silent, their faces grim. "Who's next?" Tanjia, the leader of the East District, hissed. He scanned his men with cold eyes. Everyone he looked at turned away, terrified. Tanjia was furious, but I could see the helplessness in his eyes. He only had 20 core members left. If he kept sending them to their deaths, he'd be a leader of ghosts. "Useless. All of you are useless," Tanjia barked. I watched from the back of the crowd, a faint smirk tugging at my lips. I was a slave now because of a small accident involving my time-stop ability when I first arrived, but I saw my opening. This was my chance to stop being a slave and take control of a forbidden object. The breath of sea bone was a relic of the Great Cataclysm. 100 years ago, the world ended, and everything, animals, plants, even inanimate objects, began to mutate. This revolver was one of them. It wasn't just a tool anymore, it was alive. To use it, you had to satisfy its containment condition, which was essentially a blood pact. The condition was simple: fate roulette. It was a game of luck. 1 bullet, 6 chambers. You spin the cylinder and take turns shooting yourself until someone dies. To win the breath of sea bone's loyalty, you had to win repeatedly until it deemed you worthy. I glanced at the clock hanging on the stone wall. 11:49 p.m. I needed to wait. My ability wouldn't reset until midnight. "Tanjia, if no one from the East District dares to step up, this forbidden object belongs to the West." Wang Shi, the West District leader, sneered. His mechanical left eye flickered with an eerie red light. "I found it first," Tanjia shot back. "You're not taking it. You've had it for days and haven't found a single person brave enough to claim it," Wang Shi countered. "There are monsters outside these walls. Without a forbidden object, this town is finished. Are you going to sacrifice us all for your ego?" The crowd shifted uneasily. The townspeople didn't care who led them. They just wanted to survive. Tanjia knew he was losing his grip. If he didn't let the game continue, the mob would tear him apart. But if the West District got the gun, he was as good as dead anyway. "I won't destroy the town," Tanjia said, his voice deep. "The forbidden object belongs to the capable, but the East District hasn't lost yet." Wang Shi laughed. "Fine. Let's see who else you're willing to kill. Who's next?" Tanjia turned back to his men, his gaze heavy and desperate. Every one of them stepped back, trembling in fear. Tanjia didn't look at his subordinates. His eyes swept past them, landing on the crowd of East District residents watching from the shadows. Tanjia, make this promise," he shouted. "If anyone among you can make the breath of sea bone acknowledge them as master, From this moment on, you are my brother. You will be the vice commander of the East District." The residents looked at each other in silence. No one spoke. The atmosphere turned awkward fast. I almost wanted to laugh. How many brothers had Tanjia sent to their deaths already? Nobody was stupid enough to fall for that. Tanjia's face flushed with suppressed rage. His plan was simple. Even if his own men couldn't get the forbidden object, it was better in the hands of a local peasant than with the West District. But he hadn't expected his generous offer to be met with total silence. Just as he was about to explode in fury, the crisp sound of clanking chains rang out. "Move aside. People might think the East District has run out of men." A cocky, youthful voice cut through the crowd. The residents gasped, stepping back to see which fool was volunteering for a death sentence. This wasn't a normal game of roulette. Usually, you just had to survive one round. To claim a forbidden object, you had to keep winning until the item accepted you. Liu, the magician from the West District, had already won 3 rounds and fired 5 blanks, yet the gun still hadn't acknowledged him. The difficulty was insane. I walked forward slowly, my feet heavy with iron shackles. My clothes were a mess of faded blue and green, and my face was caked in grime and mud. You couldn't even see my features, but my eyes were clear. Unlike the people around me, whose eyes were either numb and dim or filled with cruelty and greed, mine burned with a different light. It was a flame born from a mix of old-world civilization and wasteland grit. "Is that Bai Yi?" someone whispered. "I thought he went crazy." "He'd have to be crazy to step up now," another replied. "I heard he ran into something out in the wasteland. When he came back, he lost his mind. He kept muttering about being the god of the new age and standing above the heavens." "That's not all," a third person chimed in. "I heard him reciting weird poems. Something about who rules the wind at the end of the wasteland, and how snow pressed him down for years, but now he's stepping on the mountain peak." My face twitched under the mud. Listening to them gossip about my cringeworthy past was painful. When I first crossed over to this world, I realized I had the power to stop time. I got arrogant. I thought I was the protagonist of the universe. I looked at everyone like they were ants. When Tanjia came to collect protection money, I lost it. I called him trash. I told him a mere district commander was a bug who shouldn't dare collect taxes from a god. I was ready to show off my divine power against their guns, but then I froze. My time stop lasted exactly 2 seconds and then ran out. I had wasted 58 seconds earlier that day testing it. That was when I learned the hard way. I only get 60 seconds of frozen time per day. After that stunt, I went from a free citizen to a slave in chains. In this post-apocalyptic era, mental collapses were common. Tanjia just assumed I'd lost my mind. But since he didn't want to waste labor, he kept me alive as a slave. Tanjia stared at me, his expression turning strange. "Bai Yi. You. Is your head right today?" Just this morning, I had been telling him I was going to start a new era. "I'm cured," I said, my voice steady. "I ate some toxic mushrooms in the wild. I was hallucinating. I've always been a good liar." Tanjia noticed my eyes were clear, and I wasn't rambling about Godhead anymore. A look of relief washed over his face. He knew about those mushrooms. Some people even hunted them for the high. "Xiaobai, I thought your mind was corrupted by the wasteland, which is why I made you a slave," Tanjia said, his voice suddenly warm and fake. "Listen, if you can contain the breath of sea bone, I'll restore your citizenship. Better yet, we'll become sworn brothers. You and I will run the East District together." He was laying it on thick. Talk is cheap, and he was handing out empty promises like candy. I didn't believe a word of it. "Unlock me," I said, rattling my chains. A flash of coldness crossed Tanjia's eyes at my disrespectful tone, but he forced a smile. Right. My memory is failing me. Someone get the keys. Unlock Xiaobai." A subordinate ran over and freed my legs. I stretched my stiff limbs, feeling the blood flow back. Then, I walked up to the table and kicked the dried corpse sitting in the challenger's chair. Thud, the shriveled body flew 3 feet and shattered into pieces on the floor. I sat down, acting as arrogant as possible. I wanted to be low-key, but my situation didn't allow for it. I had the power to stop time. How could I stay humble? I might not be a god, but I could definitely be a menace. Across the table, Liu narrowed his eyes. He looked wary. He had heard stories about me, that I was a lone wolf who hunted in the wasteland alone. Anyone who survived the wasteland solo was dangerous. He wondered if a hunter like that would really be stupid enough to eat toxic mushrooms. Was I hungry, or just looking for a thrill? As I sat there, I glanced at the clock. 11:55 p.m. I needed to stall. I had finally figured out how my power worked. It wasn't magic, it was a temporal desync. The old world I came from and this ruined world didn't run at the same speed. A day in the old world was exactly 24 hours. A day here was 23 hours and 59 minutes. Because my soul belonged to a 24-hour cycle, I gained 1 extra minute every day that existed outside of this world's flow. Let's begin, Liu said, his voice cold. Do you want to go first, or should I? I leaned back, trying to waste every second I could. Who goes first? How do we even decide that? Liu frowned. We rock, paper, scissors for it, obviously. I slammed my hand on the table with a deafening crack. The sound echoed through the square, making everyone jump. Some guards instinctively reached for their holsters. Who are you calling blind? I barked, leaning in. Say it again. I dare you. Liu looked stunned. He hadn't even said anything yet, but I didn't care about the truth. I just needed to cause a scene. I grabbed his flashy floral collar, pulling him toward me like I was about to break his nose. Guns clicked all around us. Wang Shi and his men from the West Zone aimed their weapons at my head. Behind me, Tanjia's team reacted instantly, drawing their guns and leveling them at the opposition. The air felt heavy, like a single spark would blow the whole place to hell. Liu's face went pale. He was terrified a stray bullet would catch him in the crossfire of a full-scale gang war. Let go, he hissed, his voice trembling. I didn't mean it like that. I let go and flashed a wide, innocent grin. Oh, you didn't? You should have said so earlier. I almost misunderstood. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 11:56 p.m. Damn, only 1 minute had passed. Liu looked down at the black, greasy handprint I'd left on his clean shirt. He looked like he wanted to cry. I could tell exactly what he was thinking. He thought the toxic mushrooms were still rotting my brain. Even Tanjia leaned in from behind me, whispering cautiously. Bai Yi, are you sure you're okay? Maybe we should. I turned on him instantly, my eyes wide. You want to take my place? I snapped. If you're so worried, sit down and do it yourself. I hate people talking behind my back. Tanjia froze. As the leader of the East Zone, being scolded like a child in public was a massive insult. He looked like he wanted to shoot me, but he held back. He knew the truth. If I didn't contain the bone chills taboo object, the entire town was finished. He swallowed his pride and stayed silent. Liu took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. He was a professional cheater known as Magic Hand. He spent years practicing his craft. He could feel the weight of cards and manipulate a revolver's cylinder to stop exactly where he wanted. He was confident he could control the outcome. I'm going to throw scissors, he said, staring me down. He was trying to play mind games, telling me his move before he made it. I didn't care about his games. I only cared about the time. 3 minutes left. 3 long, agonizing minutes. Do you know there's a guaranteed way to win Destiny Roulette? I asked. The crowd went silent. Liu narrowed his eyes. It's a game of luck, he muttered. There's no such thing as a winning strategy. I looked at him with pure disdain. Just because you're ignorant doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I leaned forward, lowering my voice for dramatic effect. The secret is to let your opponent take the first shot. Then, you take the gun and shoot them 5 times. The silence that followed was painful. It was a bad joke, and it landed like a lead weight. Someone in the back started laughing nervously, while others started cursing me out for wasting their time. Liu rolled his eyes. That's not a strategy. Just play the game. He held his hand out for rock, paper, scissors. I didn't move. 2 minutes left. I watched the seconds tick by, while Liu's arm started to get sore from holding it up. The crowd started whispering. They thought I was losing my mind again, or worse, that I was a coward. Tanjia was gripping his gun so hard his knuckles were white. If you're scared, get out of the way. Liu spat, pulling his hand back. I finally looked at him and smiled. I'm not scared. I'm bored. I gestured to the revolver. 1 bullet. A 1 in 6 chance of dying? That's for children. Let's make this interesting. I told him to add more bullets. The crowd gasped. Liu hesitated. He had practiced with one bullet for years. Adding a second would mess up his calculations and drop his guaranteed win rate. You don't have the guts, I taunted. That did it. He slammed a second bullet into the chamber, glaring at me. Still not enough, I said. I checked the clock. 1 minute left. I was almost there. You want to contain the bone chills? You need courage, not just luck. Liu was fuming now. He shoved a third bullet in. 50-50. His face was twisted with rage. Is that all? I mocked. If you're scared, leave. Don't embarrass yourself. He snapped. He used my own words against me, screaming that he wasn't afraid of a brat like me. He slid a fourth bullet into the cylinder. His hand was trembling now. He couldn't even look me in the eye. The murmurs from the crowd were clearly getting to Liu. He looked like he wanted to bolt, but he couldn't. I saw a cold, hard shape press into his back. It was Wang Shi, the leader of the West District. He leaned in and whispered something that made Liu turn pale. If he didn't get his hands on the forbidden object, he was a dead man anyway. Trapped between me and his boss, Liu snapped. It was that strange, desperate courage people find when they have absolutely no way out. He gritted his teeth and his hands finally stopped shaking. He slammed the fourth bullet into the chamber. Then he looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. Let's play, he growled. I just smiled. That smile made his heart skip a beat. I could see the dread pooling in his eyes. I leaned forward and whispered, like a demon offering a deal. Still not enough. The crowd exploded. Even the district leaders looked stunned. They had seen this game played 1,000 times, but nobody was crazy enough to go to 5 bullets. That wasn't gambling. That was a death sentence. Liu screamed at me, calling me a lunatic. He said he saw right through me, that I wasn't trying to win, I was just trying to commit suicide. If you're too scared to pull the trigger, just hand over the forbidden object, I said calmly. Tan Jie's eyes lit up behind me. He started shouting for Liu to give it up, and his men joined in, creating a wall of noise. But Wang Shi wasn't having it. He pressed his gun harder into Liu's spine, the cold metal biting through his floral shirt. He told Liu I was just trying to scare him. He told him to make me shoot first. Liu hesitated. He didn't want to let me go first. He didn't trust my luck, and he didn't want to leave his life in my hands. He trusted his own magic touch more. With a trembling hand, he slid the 5th bullet into the cylinder. 30 seconds to midnight. Still not enough, I said. The silence that followed was deafening. People looked at me like I had grown a second head. A revolver only holds 6 bullets. If I added another, there was no gamble left. It was just a funeral. Liu stared at me, his mouth hanging open, but I didn't give him a chance to speak. I stood up, walked right over to him, and snatched the bone chills out of his hand. I picked up the very last bullet. 10, 9, 8. I counted down in my head, feeling the weight of the gun. I looked at the crowd, my eyes wide and wild. I've never had very good luck, I told them. I don't think I can win round after round. So, let's just settle this all at once. I clicked the 6th bullet into the final chamber. The cylinder spun and locked with a heavy thud. I raised the gun to my temple. The dark red veins on the weapon began to writhe like tiny snakes, burrowing into the skin of my hand. Everyone thought I was insane. They thought this was a suicide mission. I looked at their terrified faces and let out a short, sharp laugh. 6 bullets, I whispered. I'm betting it misfires. I pulled the trigger. The world didn't end. Instead, as the clock struck midnight, a massive golden clock face erupted from beneath my feet. It spread across the dirt, glowing with a divine light. The crowd, the trees, the buildings, everything vanished into a void of golden dials. Everyone else's clock was frozen at exactly 12. Mine showed 12:01. I was the only thing moving in a world that had been pressed into a giant pause button. Tom, stop, I whispered. The silence was absolute. Liu was frozen in front of me, his face twisted in horror, a puff of cigarette smoke hanging motionless in the air. I didn't celebrate. I didn't have time. I only get 60 seconds of this a day. To me, every second is a piece of my life. I'd calculated it before. If I lived to be 50, I'd only have 10 days of total power in my entire life. I couldn't waste a single heartbeat. I fumbled with the cylinder of the bone chills. My hands were covered in grime, and my nails were too short to get a good grip. The bullet wouldn't budge. Panic started to set in. I wasn't afraid of the gangs or the gun, but I was terrified of the seconds ticking away on my golden clock. Come on, I hissed, my forehead dripping with sweat. Move. On the fourth try, my nail finally caught the rim. The bullet popped out of the chamber and landed in my palm. I let out a jagged breath and shoved it deep into my pocket. I only took one, the one that was supposed to blow my brains out. Without the bullet, it was a blank shot. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead and forced my body back into position. I pressed the muzzle of the revolver against my temple, exactly where it had been a second ago. I took a deep breath, adjusting my mindset, and let that same confident smile crawl back onto my face. I made sure every muscle was in the right place, ensuring the angle of my grin was identical to before. Then, I deactivated the time stop. The eerie ripple of frozen time dissolved. The world rushed back to life. No one knew that time had ever stopped. To the crowd, I was still the same person, calmly pulling the trigger with an intensity and confidence that made them stare in awe. The metallic trigger clicked. I felt it resist against my finger, then give way. The internal hammer moved back, compressing the spring with a mechanical grind. When the trigger hit the limit, the hammer snapped forward, driven by the tension. It slammed into the firing pin. Click! A crisp, hollow sound echoed through the clearing. There was no smoke. There was no flash. There was no bullet. There was only me, standing there with that unchanging, arrogant smile. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a dead, heavy stillness. Everyone was frozen in place, their faces twisted into masks of pure disbelief. It was as if time had stopped all over again, but this time, it was their shock doing the work. The gun. It misfired? Someone whispered after a long pause. That's impossible. Liu screamed, leaping to his feet. His eyes were wide, bloodshot from the sheer surge of adrenaline and confusion. A wave of shouting broke out. Holy crap! A 6-bullet game of fate? Even if the gods showed up, they'd have taken that hit. How is Bai Yi still alive? Does a forbidden object even misfire? Is the quality that bad? You don't know anything, another person shouted back. It didn't misfire. Forbidden objects have their own consciousness. It must have recognized Bai Yi's courage. It chose not to kill him. That makes sense, people muttered. It's a game of life and death. It's all about guts. Who has more guts than him? Look, the gun. It's glowing. Under their terrified gazes, the bone chills erupted with a blinding, bloody light. The crimson glow spread rapidly, wrapping around my body like a shroud. Suddenly, a strange sensation took hold of me. I looked down at the revolver in my hand and felt as if I were looking at my own right arm. There was a phantom connection, like blood flowing between us. Containment successful. I wasn't surprised. If I couldn't contain it after a 6-bullet stunt like that, then this forbidden object would have been incredibly rude. As the light faded, the pulsating veins on the gun began to move. They unhooked themselves from my skin and retracted into the frame of the weapon. The bone-white chassis began to lose its color, turning into a dull, matte black metal. Within seconds, the bone chills looked like nothing more than an ordinary revolver. Seems like you have decent taste, I muttered, spinning the cylinder. I gave the gun a flashy twirl and shoved it casually into my pocket. My voice rang out through the silence, arrogant and loud, yet nobody dared to talk back. In their minds, only someone like me, someone who could laugh at death, was worthy of owning such a thing. The crowd finally started to snap out of their trance, but the way they looked at me had changed. It was as if I were draped in a veil of miracles. Ha! A loud laugh broke the tension. Tanjia, the leader of the East District, stepped forward with a face full of joy. The forbidden object belongs to the East District. Wangxi, what do you have to say now? Wangxi's face was as dark as a stagnant pool. He didn't say a word. His cold, predatory eyes flickered between Tanjia and me. His men gripped their rifles, waiting for a single command to open fire. Tanjia's smile vanished, and he signaled his own men. The air turned electric with the threat of violence. Suddenly, Wangxi stood up and let out a light chuckle. Brother Bai Yi is truly a young hero. It's a pity he's been reduced to a slave in the East District. I wonder, would you be interested in joining us in the West District? Tanjia's expression shifted instantly. He rushed to my side and threw an arm over my shoulder. Slave? That was just a misunderstanding. From now on, Little Bai is my brother. He's the vice commander of the East District. Why would he join the West? Right, Little Bai? He looked at me, his eyes a mix of desperate pleading and hidden threats. I smiled thinly and brushed his hand off my shoulder. Before I contained the forbidden object, you called me Little Bai. I didn't hold it against you. But now that I have it, what do you think you should call me? Tanjie's face turned several shades of red and purple in front of everyone. He swallowed his rage, forcing a laugh. Brother Bai Yi, I'm a blunt man. I don't talk pretty, but I keep my word. From today on, you're my blood brother. We rule the East District together. I raised an eyebrow. Old Tan, how many times do I have to tell you? Use my official title in front of people. Tanjia blinked. He was thinking, when did you ever say that? You didn't even use mine, But he didn't dare argue. He was terrified I'd jump ship to the west. He just bowed his head. Right. Vice Commander Bai? Men, what are you waiting for? Greet him. The dozens of lackeys from the East District shouted out in a messy, disjointed chorus. Vice Commander Bai. I nodded, satisfied. I waved my hand with a grand gesture. Boys, let's go home. The East District thugs looked at each other, hesitant. They kept glancing at Tanjia out of the corners of their eyes. Tanjia forced another smile. What are you standing there for? Didn't you hear Vice Commander Bai? Move out. We marched back to the East District in a grand procession. Behind us, Wang Shi and his West District crew stood there with ugly expressions. Commander, Liu started to stammer. Shut up, you useless waste, Wang Shi hissed, throwing him a chilling look. We're leaving. As the two major powers of the dusty town withdrew, the crowd dispersed. Back in the East District, inside the Tire Tavern, Tanjia and his inner circle crowded around me. They were in high spirits, slamming down glasses of low-grade booze and shouting crude jokes. The Tire Tavern hadn't always been called that. The old red-painted wooden sign actually said, Old Times Tavern. The owner, Old Wong, was over 40 with graying hair. They said he used to read books back in the day and had a bit of a poetic soul, which is why he picked the name. Nobody knew what old times he was mourning, and nobody cared. Because money was tight and building materials were scarce, he'd scavenged a bunch of discarded tires from the junkyard to use as chairs. Most people in town couldn't read anyway, so they just called it Tire. Now that Vice Commander Bai has a forbidden object, we don't have to worry about those mutated monsters outside anymore, one of the men shouted. Yeah, those beasts have been surrounding the town for a month. If we didn't solve this soon, we'd all starve to death. Those things are cunning. I swear they're getting as smart as humans. They know a direct assault on the town would cost them, so they just sit out there and cut off our trade routes. Someone leaned in, acting all sycophantic. By the way, Vice Commander, this is the first time we've seen someone contain a forbidden object. Why don't you show us what it can do? Let us see its power. I was busy stuffing my face with food and didn't answer. Tanjia, however, snapped at the man. What are you talking about? This isn't a circus act. Besides, firing the bone chills drains the user's vitality. You think he can just fire it for fun? Then he turned to me. Tanjia's expression shifted instantly. He flashed me a smile that looked like it belonged on a professional actor. Vice Commander Bai, don't mind these idiots, he said smoothly. A man's vitality is precious. You need to save your strength to deal with those mutated beasts. I didn't say a word. I just reached out and patted Tanjia's shoulder with my hand, which was dripping with grease from the meat. I made sure to wipe the excess oil off on his expensive jacket. You're the only one who talks sense, old Tan, I said, grinning. Hey, someone, bring me another plate of meat. Tanjia's eyes twitched. I could see the literal physical pain in his face. In Dusty Town, meat was a luxury beyond imagination. Most people here were lucky to eat one meal a day, and it was never anything good. Going hungry for days was the norm. Now that the town was under siege, their food reserves were almost gone. Only a leader like Tanjia could afford to eat meat every day. Vice Commander, Tanjia said, his voice straining to stay polite. The monster problem isn't solved yet, and food is really tight. How about you save some for later? Here, have a cockroach protein bar to tide you over. He pulled out a black, rectangular bar. I could see the faint outline of cockroach legs sticking out of the compressed mush. This was the staple food of the wasteland. It even had a crude slogan printed on the wrapper. Cockroach protein bars. They taste great. All the nutrition you need for a day. Produced by the Cockroach Protein Factory. I looked at that bar and felt a surge of pure rage. This thing was a nightmare from my predecessor's memories. It was technically edible, but it tasted like a man with sweaty feet had worn silk socks inside snow boots, ran 5 miles, left the socks to rot in the boots until spring, and then rubbed those socks directly onto your tongue. I ate these every single day before I became vice commander. I snapped. If I'm still eating this garbage now that I've been promoted, then what was the point of the promotion? I swung my hand and slapped the bar right out of his grip. It went flying into the crowd of thugs, who immediately started brawling over it like starving dogs. Tanjia's face turned sour. But you've been eating them your whole life, he stammered. I ignored his logic and threw my arm around his shoulder, leaning in close. Old Tan, do you know what the first thing a man should do after he succeeds is? What? He asked, blinking. Forget where he came from, I said firmly. If you don't start acting better than you used to, you haven't really succeeded, have you? Look, don't worry. With me here, those beasts are as good as dead. Once they're gone, we'll have all the meat we want. So don't be stingy. Feed me now so I can stay strong. You wouldn't want me to run out of energy when the monsters attack, would you? I had spent my previous life listening to bosses give me motivational speeches. I knew exactly how to paint a fake picture of the future to get what I wanted. Tanjia forced a smile. Right. Vice Commander Bai is absolutely right. Someone, get this man more meat. Inside, however, Tanjia was already planning my funeral. He decided that the moment I dealt with the monsters, he would kill me. He didn't just want his power back. He wanted the bone chills. A forbidden object was worth a fortune on the black market. If I died from the strain of using it, even better. He wouldn't even have to get his hands dirty. After I had stuffed myself until I could barely move, I headed to the private house Tanjia had assigned to me. I wasn't going back to my old shack. Like I said, forgetting where you came from is key. Once I left, the tavern went silent. Tanjia's face darkened, his eyes shimmering with murderous intent. His subordinates stayed quiet, terrified of his temper. Finally, one of his confidants leaned in. Boss, the man whispered. That Bai kid is getting way too cocky just because he has a forbidden object. He has zero respect for you. Bang. Tanjia slammed his fist onto the table. Zero respect. The brat treated me like a rug. He clearly doesn't know who mountain boar Tanjia is. As his anger flared, the hair on his arms began to stand up. It turned black and stiff, looking like the steel bristles of a wild boar. A primal, predatory aura filled the room, and 2 puffs of white steam exhaled from his nostrils. The thugs around him immediately dropped to the floor. Please, boss, calm down, they cried. You're a gene modder who's taken the transformation serum. He's just a normal human relying on a toy. Once he shoots those monsters, he'll be too weak to fight back. Then we can do whatever we want with him. Tanjia's expression softened slightly. His cronies were saying exactly what he wanted to hear, but he had to play the part of a righteous leader. I wanted to be his brother, Tanjia sighed, looking fake distressed. I wanted us to rule the East District together. But he's become arrogant and greedy. A man like that is a curse to the people of this town. For the sake of my brothers and the future of Dusty Town, I will have to break my word and take him out. I'll carry the guilt so you don't have to. Boss is so noble, the thugs shouted. We follow you to the death. Meanwhile, in a sturdy red brick house, I stepped out of a hot shower. I stood naked in front of a mirror, wiping the steam away. I studied my reflection. Not bad, I thought. Actually pretty handsome. I had messy black hair that fell over my eyes, partially hiding a gaze that was sharp and wild, like a wolf's. There was a fresh scratch across the bridge of my nose that was still scabbing over. It didn't ruin my face. It just made me look tougher. I was lean and tall, though my skin was a bit pale from malnutrition. This was the first time I'd actually seen myself clearly. Water was too precious for washing in Dusty Town, so everyone usually looked like they'd been rolled in dirt. But now that Tanjia was footing the bill, I was going to enjoy every drop. If I had to guess, I muttered to the mirror, Old Tan is currently plotting how to murder me. The man was a snake. I knew his type. The second the monsters were gone, he'd try to snatch the bone chills and sell it. But I wasn't worried. When I bonded with the forbidden object, I had used 10 seconds of my safe time. I still had 50 seconds left. That was more than enough time to kill Tangia. Even if he was a gene modder, he was still a carbon-based life form. No matter how many steel bristles he grew, his throat, his eyes, and his groin were still soft spots. I wasn't killing him yet because I needed him. His thugs were the frontline defense against the monster horde. If the siege didn't end, we'd all starve anyway. I lay down on the bed, spinning the cold, white revolver of the bone chills around my finger. A faint smile played on my lips. Everyone thought I had simply contained the object. They didn't realize there were two ways to do it: a standard containment and a perfect containment. Back when I was a wasteland hunter, I had met old-timers who had seen everything. They weren't always strong, but they knew the secrets of the world. A standard containment was like a contract. You gave the object what it wanted, and it worked for you. It was like a boss and an employee. The employee does the job, but their heart isn't in it. But what I had achieved was a perfect containment, and that changed everything. The forbidden object was fully subdued. Its body and soul now belonged to me. By firing those 6 bullets, I had achieved a perfect containment of the bone chills. The ability of this weapon was actually quite simple. It drained the user's blood and essence, infusing that raw life force into the bullets to amplify their power. Normally, firearms struggled to pierce the thick hides of mutated beasts. Even if they broke the skin, they rarely dealt a killing blow. The bone chills was different. It could tear through their defenses with ease and end them in a single shot. But there was a catch. Draining blood essence is devastating to the human body. If I fired too many times, I'd be sucked dry and die on the spot. However, a perfect containment changed the rules entirely. While the gun still drained my essence to fire, it had a hidden perk. When the bone chills killed an enemy, it plundered their life force and fed it back to me. Instead of growing weaker, I would actually get stronger the more I fought. I lay there, spinning the cold revolver, a dark smile tugging at my lips. I was eating Tangia's food, using his men, and now I was going to use his resources to harvest life force for myself. Old Tin really was a generous guy. I couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he realized that instead of dying from exhaustion, I was becoming a monster in my own right. Meanwhile, in a dilapidated 2-story villa in the West District, a man named Li Yu was kneeling on the floor. His face was ghostly pale, and his body shook with uncontrollable fear. Wang Shi, the leader of the West District, sat in a worn leather chair. His expression was cold as ice. "Li Yu," Wang Shi said, his voice low and dangerous. "You were a refugee from another town. I took you in. I fed you. And how do you repay me? You swore that if you couldn't contain that forbidden object, you'd give me your head. Well, it's time to settle the debt." Li Yu trembled even harder. "Commander, it wasn't my fault. If that guy Bai Yi hadn't jumped in out of nowhere, I would have had it." "Shut up, you useless waste," Wang Shi interrupted. "I hate people who make excuses for their failures. Look at yourself. You're both human. Why did Bai Yi succeed while you failed? Are you even human, or just a dog?" "Commander, please, give me one more chance," Li Yu begged. "I'm still useful. I've practiced sleight of hand for over 10 years. My gambling skills are unmatched. I can run your casinos and win you a fortune." "Screw your casinos," Wang Shi barked. "Dusty Town is full of paupers. Where am I supposed to open a casino? Since you can't win me money, I'll help you leave this world with some dignity." Wang Shi gave a nod to one of his thugs. The man stepped forward, racked the slide of his pistol, and aimed it right at Li Yu's forehead. Li Yu turned into a blubbering mess, tears and snot streaming down his face. "I don't want to die. Please. My mother is waiting for me to come home. I'm her only son." The pathetic display actually made the thug hesitate for a second. But under Wang Shi's freezing gaze, the man slowly began to pull the trigger. Suddenly, the weeping Li Yu exploded into motion. His right hand moved like a blur, a literal shadow in the air. In a heartbeat, he snatched the gun from the thug's hand and lunged at Wang Shi. Before anyone could react, Li Yu had the barrel pressed against Wang Shi's temple. He looked like a completely different person, fierce, desperate, and deadly. "Back off," Li Yu screamed. "Back off, or I'll kill him." The guards froze. Nobody expected this coward to have such speed or such guts. Slowly, the sound of clapping filled the room. Wang Shi was smiling. "Impressive," Wang Shi praised, his voice devoid of fear. "The magic hand indeed. That was so fast even I didn't see it. Truly remarkable. Shut up. Tell your men to step back. Wangshi didn't move. He reached out with his free hand, lit a cigarette, and exhaled a cloud of smoke. You know, Liu, there's one thing I hate more than anything in this world. I hate it when people point a gun at my head. You're still acting tough with a gun to your skull? Liu roared, shoving the barrel harder against Wangshi's temple. I'll kill you. I swear I'll. Clang. The sound wasn't flesh meeting metal. It was metal hitting metal. Liu froze, his face going white as a sickening realization set in. Crunch. A gunshot went off, followed by a scream that sounded like a dying animal. My hand. My hand. Liu wailed. Wangshi's right arm had shot out from his sleeve, revealing a gleaming, cold mechanical limb. He had crushed Liu's hand and the pistol into a mangled mess of flesh and scrap metal. Wangshi let go, letting Liu collapse to the floor. He rubbed his temple where the bullet had grazed him. The fake skin had been torn away, revealing a dull silver alloy underneath. I told you, Wangshi said, looking down at the hole in his head. I hate guns pointed at me. Ever since the last time it happened, I spent a fortune having a reinforced alloy plate embedded into my skull. Liu wasn't listening. He was staring at his shattered right hand. The bones were pulverized. The hand he had trained for decades, the source of his pride and his survival, was gone. My hand, my magic hand. He whispered, his eyes turning hollow. The light of life seemed to drain out of him, leaving behind nothing but a gray shell. He didn't even fight back when the thugs grabbed him. Just kill me. Just do it. Oh, Wangshi smirked. You were begging for your life a second ago? Now you want to die? Liu let out a miserable laugh. I lived by this hand. Now I'm a cripple. What's the point? Tears rolled down his cheeks. Mom, I'm sorry. I won't be coming home. Wangshi burst out laughing. It was a cruel, jagged sound. You want to die? No, I won't let you. I want you to live the rest of your life as a useless cripple. I want you to feel that pain every single day. He waved his hand, and his men dragged Liu out like a sack of trash. They threw him into the town's garbage dump, where piles of filth buried his broken body. The two thugs spat on the pile and walked away, disgusted by the smell. Once they were gone, the trash shifted. Liu poked his head out. His eyes were no longer hollow. They were sharp and bright. Wangshi, you absolute moron, Liu muttered. He clutched his mangled right hand, hissing through the agonizing pain. I knew a psychopath like you couldn't resist the urge to watch someone suffer slowly. He struggled to his feet and began to limp away under the moonlight. He looked up at the silver orb in the sky and let out a shaky breath. Another day alive, he whispered. Not bad. He tried to act tough, but as he looked at his ruined hand, a dark shadow crossed his face. He had survived, but the price was higher than he wanted to admit. Early the next morning, Tanjia was pounding on my door. He had dozens of armed men behind him, all ready for war. Vice Commander Bai, no time to waste. Tanjia shouted. Let's go wipe out those mutated beasts. I leaned against the doorframe and let out a long, slow yawn. Hold your horses, old Tan, I said, stretching my arms. There's an old saying, a sharp blade makes for fast work. I've barely touched a gun in my life. You really expect me to just run out there and start shooting? Tanjia froze. I could see the gears turning in his head. He probably realized I had a point. Bone chills was a legendary weapon, but it was still a gun. If I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, it was less useful than a rusty kitchen knife. You're saying you need target practice, Tanjia said, nodding slowly. Fine, I'll train you myself. Tanjia had spent over a decade scrapping for survival in the wasteland. He didn't have formal military training, but he knew how to handle a firearm. Experience had made him a decent shot. So, I spent the entire first day under his wing. I had a blast, honestly. I got to scratch that itch of firing off rounds until my ears rang. I wasted a mountain of Tanjia's precious ammunition and ate my fill of meat. Tanjia, on the other hand, looked like he was bleeding internally. In a place like Dusty Town, bullets and meat were worth more than gold. Every shot I missed was a resource he'd never get back. But to kill the mutated beasts, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and keep feeding my training. The next morning, Tanjia was back at my door. Vice Commander Bai, he said, his voice tight. You've spent a day with the gun. Those beasts are huge. If we get close enough, you won't miss. Can we move out today? I waved him off with a bored expression. Old Tan, take it easy. There's an old saying. A person who eats too fast burns their tongue. Yesterday, I practiced on stationary targets. Those monsters aren't going to just stand there like wooden boards. Today, I need to practice hitting moving targets. Tan Jie suppressed his rage, his face turning a shade of purple, but he eventually nodded. On the third day, he was back again. Vice Commander, you've practiced moving targets. Surely today is the day? I'm not just nagging you. The East District is out of food. Our ammo is nearly gone. If we don't act now, we won't need the monsters to kill us. We'll just starve to death. Old Tan, there's another old saying, I started, leaning back. Haste makes waste. Tan Jie looked like he was about to explode. Where the hell do you get all these old sayings? Just as he was about to snap, I shifted gears. But, as the old saying also goes, speed is the soul of war. We should strike fast and hard. So, no more delays. Let's move. Tan Jie's chest heaved as he stared at me with those sharp, triangular eyes. I think he wanted to crack my skull open just to see how many proverbs were stored inside. Old Tan, why are you standing there? I asked, already walking past him. Move it. Double time. When I think about the poor people of Dusty Town starving because of these monsters, my heart bleeds. Let's go. I acted like he was the one holding us up. Tan Jie took a deep breath, signaling his men to follow. I could feel the killing intent radiating off him. He was clearly planning to kill me the second the monsters were dead. A while later, we reached the town walls. Calling them walls was generous. They were just piles of mud, bricks, and rusted barbed wire. Crude, but they kept the things outside from getting in. Brother Bai, you look even sharper than you did 3 days ago, a voice called out. It was Wang Shi, the leader of the West District. He was smiling, completely ignoring Tan Jie. Now that I was cleaned up, I looked like a proper young man again, full of energy despite my ragged clothes. I glanced at Wang Shi and spoke coldly. Call me Vice Commander Bai. I didn't give the leader of the West District an ounce of respect. Surprisingly, this made Tan Jie feel better. He realized I wasn't just being a jerk to him. I was being a jerk to everyone. Wang Shi narrowed his eyes. He had heard about the friction between me and Tan Jie. He wanted us to be at each other's throats, but my dismissive attitude toward him was confusing. He probably thought the power of the forbidden object had gone to my head, or that I was playing some deep tactical game to make them let their guard down. He was wrong. I wasn't hiding anything. I just genuinely didn't care about them. 3 days ago, they were a threat. But now, my time reserve had reached 3 minutes and 50 seconds. In 3 minutes and 50 seconds, I could kill Wang Shi, Tan Jie, and every single one of their goons before they could blink. To me, these powerful district leaders were just trash waiting to be cleared out. The only reason they were still breathing was because I needed their help with the monsters. If the town fell, I'd be in trouble too. Tan Jie handed me a battered pair of tactical binoculars. The beasts are hiding nearby. The bastards never come within 100 meters of the walls. They just circle us. The moment anyone tries to leave, they strike. I looked through the lenses. The land outside was a wasteland of cracked, yellow earth and swirling dust. A few mutated shrubs and gnarled trees clung to life in the dirt. I scanned the horizon and spotted them. About 100 meters out, in a patch of scrub, several pairs of crimson eyes stared back. When the wind flattened the bushes, I saw their full forms. They were hounds, or they used to be. Their fur had fallen off in patches, replaced by sickly gray-purple tumors. Thick veins pulsed across their bodies, and their claws looked like jagged shards of metal. There are only a few of them? I asked, lowering the binoculars. Those are just scouts, Tan Jie explained. The Hound King sends them to make sure we don't escape. They're smart. So what's the plan? I asked. Wang Shi stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the bushes. Tan Jie and I will lead our best men out. We'll engage them in close combat. While we have them distracted, you use bone chills to pick them off. Why go out there? I asked. Can't we just lure them in and shoot from the walls? Wang Shi shook his head. We tried that. We sent out bait to lure them within range. We killed a few, but they learned. Now, no matter what we do, they won't come close. We have to take the fight to them. Bait. I repeated the word. My mind raced. I knew exactly what kind of bait these two would have used. I didn't need to ask what happened to the bait. I already knew. Those poor souls were likely rotting in the bellies of the hounds by now. In the wasteland, human life was the cheapest currency available. What are we waiting for? I asked, my voice cold. I didn't wait for an answer. I waved my hand dismissively at the thugs behind me. Boys, follow your vice commander. We're going out to meet the enemy. I stepped toward the gate without hesitation. I wasn't being brave. I was impatient. I needed to know exactly what this forbidden object could do. Behind me, Tan Jie and Wang Shi exchanged a silent look, then signaled their men to follow. A group of 30 men marched out of the gates. The atmosphere was thick with dread. The underlings gripped their rifles so hard their knuckles turned white, eyes darting to every shadow and shrub. They formed a defensive circle, keeping me, Wang Shi, and Tan Jie in the center as we pushed forward. The hounds didn't move at first. They watched us with predatory patience. But the moment we crossed the 100-meter mark, the silence shattered. A series of sharp, guttural barks erupted from the scrub. Howl! 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 The horizon blurred as yellow dust kicked up into the air. Dozens of dark shapes emerged from the haze. 1, 2, 5, 20. At least 20 massive hounds were charging at us. These weren't normal dogs. They were the size of adult bulls, their heavy paws hitting the earth like a drumbeat. I felt the vibration in my boots, and I could see the color draining from Tanjie's face. Fire! Tanjie screamed. He let off the first shot, acting as a signal. Immediately, the wasteland exploded with noise. 30 rifles opened up at once, weaving a wall of lead toward the incoming beasts. No one held back. No one dared to retreat. Everyone knew that if we didn't break this siege, we'd all starve to death inside those walls eventually. The wall of bullets slowed the hounds' charge, but they didn't stop. I kept my finger off the trigger. My marksmanship wasn't great, and I couldn't afford to waste my life force on long-range pot shots. I needed them close. As I watched, I realized just how terrifying these mutated beasts were. Their flesh was like reinforced rubber. Standard bullets barely pierced their skin. Even when blood sprayed, the wounds were superficial. Unless a bullet hit an eye or a lucky cluster of shots hit the same spot, they just kept coming. We didn't have enough heavy weaponry to stop them with volume alone. We needed a killing blow. The men scrambled to reload after the first volley. The hound saw the opening and lunged. Suddenly, a beast leaped from behind a withered tree, its jaws snapping shut on the arm of an East District thug. The man's scream was piercing. He never saw it coming. Panic rippled through the line like a virus. In their terror, his comrades fired blindly. They missed the hound and riddled their own man with holes instead. Bai Yi, fire the damn gun. Tanjie roared, his voice cracking with fury. I calmly chambered around. I locked my eyes onto the hound, my gaze as cold as the barrel of my weapon. That's Vice Commander Bai Yi to you, I muttered. Boom. The bone chills roared. A crimson light tore through the air, trailing a long, bloody tail like a falling star. It hit the hound dead center. Crrrack. The beast's head exploded like a watermelon dropped from a skyscraper. Blood and bone fragments sprayed everywhere. The power was staggering. Tanjie stared in horror. He was a gene modder, his body far stronger than a normal human's, but he knew he couldn't survive a hit like that. I saw the murderous glint in his eyes sharpen. He was already planning my funeral. But then he saw me stumble. I was gasping for air, my face deathly pale. In that single moment, I felt like my body had been hollowed out. It felt like I'd spent 3 days straight donating blood. If I hadn't spent the last few days gorging on meat to build up my strength, I would have blacked out instantly. Tanjie's expression softened into a smirk. He thought he saw my limit. He figured the recoil and the drain would kill me after a few shots. But then, something happened. As the hound died, a surge of warmth flowed from the bone chills back into my arm. It rushed through my veins, replenishing the life force I'd just lost. In a heartbeat, I didn't just feel recovered, I felt stronger. A rush of pure, raw energy hit my brain, and my vision cleared. I raised the gun again. Boom. Another crimson streak. Another hound went down. My aim wasn't perfect, but the beast was already slowed by rifle fire, making it an easy target. The warmth flooded back into me again. My eyes grew brighter, fueled by a wild, defiant energy. Asterisk boom, 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 asterisk. I fired again and again. The ground around us began to pile up with corpses, mostly hounds, but a few of our own men too. The pressure was so high that even the two leaders had to join the fray. Wangxi ripped off his shirt, revealing a gleaming mechanical arm. The hydraulic hiss was sharp as the alloy frame expanded. In a fraction of a second, the arm charged with energy. He threw a punch that rippled the very air, caving in a hound's skull and sending it flying. The beast tried to crawl back up, fueled by mindless rage, but it was broken. Tanjia let out a guttural roar. Thick, black bristles erupted from his skin, forming a suit of biological armor. He waded into the pack, trading blows with the monsters, his hide thick enough to ignore their claws. Even while fighting, Tanjia kept an eye on me. He saw me firing shot after shot and felt a surge of triumph. The kid has lost his mind, he must have thought. He's going to turn himself into a dried husk at this rate. He had planned to force me to fire if I hesitated, but I was being more helpful than he ever imagined. But as the minutes passed, his smile faded. I was still firing. I wasn't dead. I wasn't even slowing down. Is he immortal? Tanjia muttered under his breath. We hadn't even seen the Hound King yet, and I was burning through ammo like it was free. Tanjia didn't want a total victory today. He wanted a war of attrition. He needed me alive for the next few days of fighting. Bai Yi, Vice Commander, Tanjia shouted over the chaos. We've done enough for today. Let's pull back and fight again tomorrow. I turned to him, my face pale but my eyes burning with a terrifying light. Retreat. I spat. The enemy is still standing. If anyone takes a single step back, I'll shoot them myself. Kill them all. Tanjia froze. He hadn't realized how much of a bloodthirsty monster I could be. I wasn't just fighting, I was feeding, and I wasn't planning on stopping until the wasteland was quiet. The Hound King was coming. I could feel it in the air. We can't rush this, Tanjia yelled, his voice cracking with panic. The boys are hitting their limit. Wangxi's mechanical arm is running out of juice. If we keep going, if you dare shake the morale of my troops again, I snarled, cutting him off. I'll be the first one to put a bullet in your head. I was riding a high I couldn't describe. My physical strength was surging with every kill, the forbidden object feeding me as much as I fed it. There was no way I was leaving. Tanjia stared at me, his face a mask of shock and fury. It was almost absurd. He was the leader of the East District, yet here I was, a vice commander with no real authority, acting like I owned the battlefield. He wanted to explode, but he didn't dare. He had to play the long game. Vice Commander Bai, listen to me, he pleaded, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. You're being drained dry. Look at you. My legs were shaking. I could barely stand. Tanjia's eyes were bloodshot with frustration. He didn't care about me, but he cared about his investment. You want to die? Fine. But don't take us with you, he roared. Wait until the pack is gone. Then you can kill yourself for all I care. But you can't die now. A few minutes ago, he was praying I'd keep firing. Now he was begging me to stop. He reached out to grab me, ready to drag me away by force, when suddenly my strength gave out. My knees buckled and I slammed into the dirt. Tanjia lunged forward, shielding me from a leaping hound's jaws. Bai Yi, are you okay? I reached up and gripped his arm with a white-knuckled intensity. My lips trembled, but my voice was iron. Pick me up. I can still fight. With a guttural scream, I forced myself to my feet using his arm as a crutch. I raised bone chills and started unloading. Asterisk bang. 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 Asterisk. Tanjia looked completely numb. He was convinced I was a lunatic. Maybe the poisonous mushrooms from earlier had permanently fried my brain. Vice Commander, please. Take it easy, he cried, grabbing me again. You're going to kill yourself. Let go of me, old Tan. I screamed, struggling against his grip. I'm going to wipe these bastards off the map. I'm begging you, let's go. Tanjia was actually pleading now. Go where? I shouted, my voice echoing across the wasteland. The hounds are everywhere. There is no retreat. Today we sink the boats. We fight until we die. Charge. What are you talking about? Tanjia looked like he was going to cry. Dusty Town is right there. It's 200 meters away. He didn't wait for an answer. He threw me over his shoulder and started sprinting. I was livid. I started slapping the side of his massive face. It was the only part of him not covered in thick, protective bristles. Behind me are the 800 souls of Dusty Town. I yelled at the top of my lungs. If I don't carve a path of blood for them, I'll have to watch them starve. I am their leader. Tanjie took the hits, his face turning red with rage, but he didn't stop. Suddenly, a sound like 10,000 galloping horses thundered through the yellow sand. Massive, distorted shadows blurred through the dust, closing in at terrifying speeds. At the front was a shadow so large it blocked the sun. The Hound King. Tanjie's face went pale. He didn't care about my heroics anymore. He just ran for his life. I kept screaming, playing my part to the end. Let me go? I'll fight him alone. The smoke of 1,000 chimneys hasn't faded. The cries of the children are still in my ears. Our weapons are the last barrier for humanity. Tanjie just kept running. They call me Vice Commander. I warred. That's not just a title, it's a responsibility. Even if I die today, my broken bones will become the bricks of the wall that protects this town. Tanjie was vibrating with stress. He's gone, he must have thought. The kid has permanent brain damage. Every inch of this soil holds the seeds of our people. I continued. Every plate of armor on my shoulder carries the light of 10,000 homes. We must stand. Stop shouting, Vice Commander. We're home. Tanjie slammed me onto the ground just as we reached the gates. I didn't stop yelling. Of course I didn't. We were home. This was the only place where people could actually hear me. You don't buy hearts and minds in the middle of an empty desert. To a civilized person, my words might have sounded fake. But to the uneducated survivors of Dusty Town, this was the most stirring speech they had ever heard. Close the gates. Wang Shi screamed, his mechanical arm sparking. The residents and thugs scrambled to heave the heavy, iron-studded timber doors shut, but a few of the slower, wounded men were still outside. As the gates groaned shut, the air was filled with horrific screams, the sound of tearing flesh, and a sickening crunching noise. The survivors inside went pale. Some turned away, tears streaming down their faces. Those were their brothers, their friends. The Hound King was still a distance away. There had been time to save them. But Wang Shi and Tanjie wouldn't take the risk. They had locked their own men out to die. The atmosphere turned cold. A heavy, bitter silence settled over the crowd. Open the gate, I said. My voice was like a blade cutting through the gloom. I'm going to save them. The residents and the thugs froze, their eyes locking onto me. I didn't wait for an answer. I checked the chamber of bone chills and started walking toward the door. Tanjie jumped in front of me. You can't go out there. The Hound King is right there. Move, old Tan, I said coldly. Those men out there, East District or West District, they are the people of Dusty Town. As long as I am Vice Commander, I will protect them. If anyone else had said it, Tanjie would have called it bullshit. But he had just seen me fighting like a demon. He believed me. It's not that I won't let you. Tanjie stuttered, sweat beads rolling down his forehead. It's that, they're already dead. Listen, the screaming stopped. I stood there for a long moment, then let out a heavy, theatrical sigh. I looked at them with a face full of disappointment and grief, then turned and walked away into the shadows of the town. Behind me, Tanjie spat a glob of phlegm on the ground. Crazy, he muttered. The kid is a total lunatic. If I hadn't carried him back, he would have let that weapon suck him dry just to kill one more dog. Nobody answered him. The thugs and the townspeople watched my retreating back with a different look in their eyes. They agreed I was a madman. On this wasteland, only a madman would trade his life for a stranger. But as they looked at their own leaders, they realized they much preferred a madman. These people were born into an age of catastrophe. They had never seen civilization, so they didn't know that 100 years ago, madmen like me were called something else. Back then, they were called heroes. As I disappeared into the shadows, a pair of hidden eyes watched me from the darkness before vanishing as well. I made it back to my temporary shelter. The look of grief and disappointment I had worn outside vanished instantly. I pulled off my shirt and stood in front of a cracked mirror, feeling a surge of excitement. The scrawny, shriveled body I had inherited was gone. In its place was a frame covered in lean, streamlined muscle. In that last fight, I had gunned down 12 hounds. In return, bone chills had fed 12 bursts of vital energy back into my soul. That energy had flooded my malnourished system, finally bringing this dying body back to life. I felt a rush of power and let a smirk tug at my lips. I wasn't as strong as a gene-modified freak like Tanjia yet, but I was already stronger than any normal man, and that was only from 12 hounds. If I wiped out the entire pack and killed the Hound King, how strong would I become? But it wasn't just about raw strength. This new body meant I could save time. If I froze time for 1 minute, a starving man could maybe run 200 meters. A fit man could run 300. That extra distance meant higher efficiency, and in my world, time was the most precious currency I had. I needed more. I needed to be stronger. Ambition burned in my chest like a physical flame. I knew the time stop was my trump card, but it was limited. Every second I used was gone forever. I had to use that stolen time to gain enough power so that one day, when the clock finally ran out, I'd have enough strength to protect myself without it. On this wasteland, power was the only truth. There were mutated beasts, gene warriors, cyborgs, and mysterious supernatural beings. The strong ruled everything. In my predecessor's memories, I saw how cheap life was. People were murdered for a piece of moldy bread, a bottle of muddy water, or even just a wrong look. If I was hungry and you had food, you died. Even if you tried to live a quiet life, slave traders would eventually knock on your door to show you the meaning of despair. A knock at the door broke my train of thought. Vice Commander Bai, the hounds have retreated. The commander is holding a victory feast and wants you there. My eyes lit up. I had been fighting all day and I was starving. I opened the door and saw the messenger, but as I stepped out, I suddenly slumped. I leaned my entire weight onto the poor kid. Vice Commander, he gasped, startled. Help me over there, I whispered, sounding like I was on my deathbed. The kid looked at my pale face and remembered how I had charged into the fray earlier. His eyes filled with respect. He carefully supported me, thinking I had sacrificed my life force for the town. The feast was at the Tire Tavern again. It was the only place in this dump of a town. Inside, thugs and residents were already drinking and cheering. People on the wasteland lived by a simple rule. If you have booze today, get drunk today. They didn't have time to mourn the dead because they might be next. Tanjia was there, sitting with Wang Shi, the leader of the West District. They were sharing a table, laughing and drinking like old friends. I knew better. In this world, smiles were usually masks for daggers. Your boy really stole the show today, Wang Shi said, sipping his drink. The way everyone looks at him has changed. Tanjia snorted. He knew exactly what Wang Shi was trying to do. Don't bother trying to sow discord. You saw him. The kid's brain is fried from poison mushrooms. He's a lunatic. And a lunatic doesn't bow to anyone. My district can't keep him, and neither can yours. Wang Shi nodded. He had seen it in my eyes too. I didn't respect either of them. He used to think I was just an arrogant kid with a powerful weapon, but now he realized I was just plain crazy. So what's the plan? Wang Shi asked. Need help? I don't need your help, Tanjia said coldly. He'll probably kill himself with that weapon soon enough. You just want to get your hands on bone chills. Don't be like that, Wang Shi laughed. We're all people of Dusty Town. Internal fighting is a dead end. Haven't you noticed? The world is getting restless. The Dawn City military has been active lately, snatching people from the border towns. War is coming. If we don't stick together, we're dead. Tanjia frowned. Compared to a giant like Dawn City, he was an ant. Here's my proposal, Wang Shi continued. Once the kid dies and the hounds are dealt with, we sell bone chills in Dawn City and split the profit. You get your high-grade gene serum, I upgrade my mechanical parts. That's how we survive. Tanjia's eyes clouded over. Before he could respond, a loud voice boomed through the tavern. The vice commander has arrived. Dozens of heads snapped toward the door. I shuffled in, looking like a walking corpse, leaning heavily on the messenger boy. The kid's face was beet red. Vice Commander, the kid whispered. I shouted it just like you told me. Don't forget my piece of meat. I patted his shoulder, looking satisfied with the attention. Don't worry. I've already forgotten. What? The kid stammered. Tanjia rushed over with a fake grin, helping me to a seat. Vice Commander Bai, you're finally here. How's the body? Feeling okay? I glared at him. Do I look okay to you, old man? Tanjia didn't even get mad. Ever since he decided I was a lunatic, his patience had become legendary. He didn't care if I insulted him or even slapped him. as long as I was useful. Sit, sit, he urged. I took the seat right between the two bosses, acting like I owned the place. What are you staring at? Bring the meat and the booze. The food arrived quickly, charred, unseasoned meat from some wasteland creature. I tore into it like a beast. My body was screaming for nutrients. Eat slowly, don't choke, Tanjia said, pouring me a drink. He wanted me fed and healthy, so I could keep fighting his battles. I wiped grease from my chin. What were you two whispering about? Talking trash behind my back. Never. Wangshi jumped in. You're the hero of the hour. We were just discussing the Hound Pack. They showed up so suddenly. I suspect this has something to do with recent movements in Shuguang City, Wangshi said, his voice dropping an octave. I raised an eyebrow, tearing a chunk of meat off the bone. Oh, tell me more. I'd heard of Shuguang City. Everyone in Dusty Town had. To the people living in this wasteland, it was a holy land. The legend said everyone there had food to eat and schools to attend. They supposedly had clean water to bathe in every single day. The women were said to be stunning, with skin as soft and white as silk. Nothing like the rough, sun-blasted hides of the wastelanders I saw every day. Wangshi chose his words carefully. Lately, Shuguang City has been deploying its army and slave-catching teams frequently. They're snatching up people from all the major towns. It looks like they're preparing for war. I nodded slowly. Shuguang City wasn't the only big player left. It had been 100 years since the Great Cataclysm. Humans had spent that century rebuilding, and massive cities had risen from the ruins like concrete giants. Now, these factions were constantly jockeying for power, carving up the map. What does that have to do with the hounds? I asked. The pack usually stays near Black Mountain, Wangshi explained. Even though they're mutated beasts, they still have animal instincts and territorial pride. They don't leave their home for no reason. If they're here, something happened at Black Mountain. When I was trading supplies in Shuguang City recently, I overheard their soldiers talking. They've been entering Black Mountain territory constantly. I think Shuguang City wants to seize that high ground to prepare for the coming war. Tanjia let out a mocking snort. Are you sure it's war? Maybe they just want to clear out the monsters. He looked at me with a pitying grin. Vice Commander Bai, you think too highly of those city dwellers. You haven't been there, so you don't know how they operate. Compared to us wastelanders who live by the blade, those people are the real man-eaters. They don't do anything unless there's profit in it. He took a swig of his drink. If all the factions actually teamed up against the mutants, those damn monsters would have been extinct years ago. But they'd rather fight each other. No one wants to waste their precious soldiers clearing out monsters outside their own borders. Some even leave the mutants alone on purpose, using them as a buffer zone against their rivals. I smiled thinly. Perfect. That fits my stereotype of humanity perfectly. All right, enough of that. Wangshi interrupted, waving a hand. We can't control what the big shots do. Our priority is the Hound Pack. Vice Commander, can you fight tomorrow? I'm ready, I said. I was actually itching for it. No. Tanjia jumped in, his face pale. You pushed yourself too hard today. You need to rest for at least a day. We have enough food to last a little longer. There's no rush. He was terrified I'd drop dead in the middle of the battlefield. If I died, who would kill the Hound King? He looked at me like I was a glass vase ready to shatter, especially since I needed a kid to help me walk into the tavern. Old Tan. I slammed my hand onto the table. The bang was so loud it drowned out the tavern's roar. Everyone froze, staring at the three of us. The silence was sudden and heavy. Tanjia rubbed his temples, looking like he had a migraine. Vice Commander Bai, listen. Listen to what? I snapped. The old saying goes, strike while the iron is hot. If we wait. Stop with the old sayings. Tanjia shouted, finally snapping. I don't care how many proverbs you have. I'm the commander. You are resting tomorrow. That's an order. I stared him down, my eyes cold. Old Tan, you're going to regret this. Without another word, I grabbed my meat and my booze and walked out. Hey, someone help the vice commander. Tanjia yelled behind me. Later that night, I lay comfortably in my bed, but my mind was racing. War was coming. War wasn't a dinner party. It was lead and gunpowder. I had my time-stop ability, sure, but could I react fast enough? A bullet travels faster than a human thought. If 1,000 soldiers opened fire, A few minutes of frozen time wouldn't even be enough to run out of the kill zone. Then there were the cannons, the snipers, and the tanks. I couldn't keep time frozen forever. Dusty Town was technically under Shugwang City's jurisdiction. If war broke out, their enemies wouldn't spare us. I could be sleeping and get vaporized by an artillery shell before I even realized I needed to freeze time. The wasteland was too dangerous. I needed a safer place to accumulate more time. My thoughts drifted back to Shugwang City. If I could get inside, I'd be much safer. Even if the city fell, the civilians inside would be the last to suffer. I'd have plenty of time to run away. It beat staying here, worrying about mutants today, bullets tomorrow, and starvation the day after. Scritch. A faint friction sound cut through the silence of my room. I narrowed my eyes, looking toward the source. The window. My window was sliding open by itself. There was no wind. There was no one outside. It moved as if pushed by a giant, invisible hand. I didn't move. I didn't even reach for the bone chills under my pillow. I knew that against a supernatural threat like this, the gun might not be enough. I just waited. If I felt even a hint of killing intent, I'd trigger the time stop instantly. After 30 seconds, a yellowed piece of paper floated through the gap. It drifted through the air, hovering right in front of my face. On it, written in dark, blood-red ink, were the words, "Tonight at midnight. Come to the woods north of town alone. Do not tell anyone. This concerns your life." "Are you kidding me?" I muttered. A floating letter? Bloody text? This wasn't scary, it was annoying. I had 3 minutes and 50 seconds of frozen time banked. If a god descended right now, I'd have enough time to walk up and slap him in the face. "Tom, stop," I whispered. Buzz. The massive golden clock face manifested beneath me, and the world ground to a halt. I bolted out of bed, grabbed the bone chills, and lunged through the window. My eyes burned with irritation. "You want to play ghost and try to scare me in the middle of the night? I don't care if you're a man or a demon. I'm going to kick your teeth in." I scanned the alleyway outside and immediately spotted a suspicious figure crouching around the corner. His right hand was wrapped in thick bandages, and his fingers were pinched in the air as if he were holding an invisible string. "Found you, you little brat," I hissed. I rushed him. As I got closer, the moonlight hit his face. I recognized him instantly. It was the magic hand, Liu. I'd heard about him, the guy whose hand Wangxi had broken. Wangxi had left Liu to rot after breaking his hand, but I never expected to see him here in the middle of the night. The word transcendent popped into my head. I had never met one, but I'd heard the legends. They weren't like the gene-modded freaks or the mechanical cyborgs. They were rare, mysterious, possessing strange, supernatural abilities. Liu's behavior was definitely strange. He was still crouching in the corner, holding his right hand up in the air like he was gripping something invisible. I reached out, tracing the air above his palm. My fingers hit something solid. It felt like cold, hard steel, but there was nothing there. It was an invisible limb, extending 3 meters out from his actual hand. I understood everything now. He had used that invisible hand to open my window. He had used it to hold the letter in front of my face. He was trying to play ghost with me. "Time resume," I whispered. Liu exhaled, rubbing his sore neck with his left hand. He grumbled to himself, wondering why there was no sound coming from my room. He expected me to be jumping out of my skin in terror. He thought I was still asleep. "I'm not sleeping," I said coldly from right behind him. "But you're about to go to sleep for a very long time." Click. I chambered around and pressed the freezing muzzle of the bone chills against the back of his head. Liu went rigid. His face turned paper white. "Bai Yi," he gasped. "Don't move," I growled. "If that right hand drops even an inch, I promise you won't see tomorrow's sun." He stayed frozen, his invisible hand still hovering awkwardly in the air. I could tell he was panicking. He had probably planned to use that invisible limb to pin me down, thinking I'd be caught off guard by a power I couldn't see. He didn't realize I had already seen right through him. "You weren't asleep?" he stammered, trying to buy time. I let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "What? You think I don't go to the bathroom at night?" He didn't believe me for a second. He had checked the room before opening the window. I had been in bed. He realized now that the moment the window moved, I hadn't hesitated. I hadn't wondered what was happening. I had simply bolted out of the room and circled behind him while he was busy playing with his stationery. He realized his target wasn't a normal person. Normal people stopped to think. I just acted. Vice Commander Bai, he said, his voice trembling. I don't have any ill intent. I'm here to discuss something important. That's a coincidence, I said, a dangerous edge in my voice. You don't have ill intent, but I do. I hate people who waste my time. You just cost me 10 precious seconds of my life. Liu didn't know I was talking about my frozen time bank. He thought I was just being dramatic. He went silent for a moment, then spoke up cautiously. Assuming a man lives to be 60, he has about 189,216,000 10-second intervals. So, technically, thud. I kicked him square in the ass, nearly sending him face first into the dirt. You think you're a math genius? You think I can't count for myself? I stepped closer, the gun never wavering. I'll give you 3 seconds. Give me one reason not to kill you. I'm here to help you, he shouted. Not good enough. I'm a transcendent. I kicked him again. So what? You want a trophy? You think being a transcendent makes you special? He scrambled to find his footing, looking at me like I was a lunatic. No, I mean, don't you want to know how I became one? Talk, I said. But if I don't like what I hear, I'm pulling the trigger. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. He told me about the Wheel of Fate. After I defeated him, Wangshi had been humiliated. In a fit of rage, he crushed Li Yu's hand and threw him out to die. Li Yu had spent his life practicing sleight of hand. With his hand ruined, he had nothing. He wanted to end it all. But then, he thought of his mother. She was back in his hometown, waiting for him to make something of himself. That thought lit a fire in his gut. The despair turned into a violent mental pressure. He felt a sharp, stabbing pain in his brain, like his mind was being stirred with a rod. When the pain faded, his broken hand had partially healed, and he realized he could manifest an invisible limb. I nodded, acting like I was impressed. I see. So to become a transcendent, I just need to break my hand and think about my mom. Liu stared at me, completely baffled. He was convinced I was insane. He explained that it wasn't about the hand or the mother, it was about the mental metamorphosis. Extreme psychological trauma could cause a person's spirit to mutate and evolve. I knew he was right. In this wasteland, everything was touched by mutation. Even if we looked normal, the seeds of change were buried deep inside us. In the old world, a mental breakdown just made you a crazy person. In this era, it could turn you into something more. It made me realize that the Great Cataclysm wasn't just the end of the world. It was a brutal, forced evolution. The monsters were just the ones who had evolved the wrong way. Transcendents were simply those who had found the correct path of evolution. Or maybe not. Who was to say which path was truly correct? The monsters might think they were the winners. I looked at the man in front of me, my fingers still resting on the trigger of bone chills. Commander Bai, he pleaded, his voice trembling. I've told you everything. Can you please put the gun down? I'm terrified. I didn't budge. You're asking for a favor, yet you haven't even told me your name. Is that how you show respect? Liu's face flushed with anger. His fists clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. If I hadn't been pointing a lethal forbidden object at his head, I was sure he would have tried to punch me in the mouth. Please, he gritted out. Just put the gun down. No, I said flatly. Damn it. Then can I at least put my hand down? It's not healed yet. I can't keep holding it up like this. No. Liu snapped. He stood up abruptly, his eyes blazing with fury. Listen to me. I told you, we aren't enemies. I'm here to offer you a partnership. Don't you realize the danger you're in? Wang Shi and Tan Jia won't let you live. They've already made a deal. Once you use your weapon to clear out the mutated hounds, they're going to team up and kill you. Then they'll sell your forbidden object and split the profit. I leaned back, my expression unreadable. And partnering with me is your only chance to survive. I'm a transcendent, and you have that weapon. Together, we can take them both down. Besides, Wang Shi ruined my hand. I want revenge. So you snuck into my camp at midnight just to tell me this? Yes, and I have a plan. The next time you leave the city, I'll be waiting in ambush. When they're exhausted from fighting the monsters, we'll strike together. We can wipe them out in one go. After that, Dusty Town is yours to rule. I won't interfere. I felt a flicker of surprise. Then what do you want? Revenge, Liu said, shaking his head. That and money. You take the town, I take the treasury. Once I have the credits, I'm leaving. To be honest, I don't care about being a commander here. I'm going to Shugwang City. I need the best doctors to fix my hand. He looked down at his ruined limb. Becoming a transcendent improved my physical stats, but I don't have my old speed or precision. My powers are tied to my hands. If I can heal, I'll be unstoppable. I'll reclaim my title as the Magic Hand. Once I've made a name for myself in Shugwang City, I'll bring my mother there to live in luxury. I looked at him differently then. Liu wasn't exactly a saint, but he was a loyal son. We didn't have a personal grudge, and we definitely shared the same enemies. I slowly lowered Bone Chills and tucked it away. Liu's eyes lit up. So, you agree to the partnership? No, I said, shaking my head. I don't. He looked like I just slapped him. Why? This deal is perfect for you. There's no downside. I let out a long, heavy sigh. I turned my head, looking up at the moon at a 45-degree angle, trying to look as profound as possible. I could team up with you, I said, my voice deep and somber. We could kill Wang Shi and the others tonight. But have you thought about the hounds? What happens to the people of Dusty Town if the monsters aren't stopped? Liu froze. The way he looked at me shifted from anger to confusion, then to something like awe. He stayed silent for a long time. I could help you deal with the hounds. I shook my head again. Do you know how many people would die? You're a transcendent, sure, but you're not even as strong as Wang Shi yet. If you were, you wouldn't be begging me for help. If they can't handle the siege, you certainly can't. Until every last hound is dead, I won't move against them. But they'll kill you the moment the last monster falls. Liu shouted, his voice desperate. And the way you use that gun, you might not even live long enough for them to take their shot. I swept my sleeve back with a theatrical flourish, sending a cloud of dust flying from my patched-up clothes. Enough. Do you think I, Bai Yi, am a man who fears death? Is my life more important than the 800 souls living in this town? My words hit him like a physical blow. In this cruel, selfish era, he couldn't believe someone like me actually existed. Standing next to me, he looked like he felt small, ashamed of his own selfishness. I understand now, Liu said, his voice quiet and respectful. He stared at me with newfound intensity. Go ahead then. Do what you have to do. I'm not a good man, but I will respect your wish. Once the hounds are gone, we'll handle Wang Shi. But I'm warning you, I can't guarantee you'll still be alive by then. If you get into trouble, I'll help if I can, but I won't throw my life away to save you. My mother is still waiting for me. I can't die here. It doesn't matter, I replied, standing tall. My mind is made up. The cold moonlight fell over me, casting a silver glow on my shoulders. Liu looked moved, almost inspired. The wheel of fate. I see now why I lost to you. Take care of yourself. I will. Now leave. I heard the rustle of leaves as Liu disappeared back into the woods without looking back. Once I was sure he was gone, the noble expression on my face vanished. I wasn't exactly lying to him, but I wasn't being a martyr either. A gentleman focuses on the results, not the intentions, right? The real reason I refused his plan wasn't because I was obsessed with saving the town. It was because I knew something he didn't, and I wasn't about to let a partner get in the way of my own survival. I didn't stay in this hellhole just to be a hero for Dusty Town. My real plan was much more selfish. I wanted to use Wang Shi and Tan Jie as my personal shields. As long as they kept me protected in the center of their formation, I could fire my weapon and farm kills to increase my own strength. It was a perfect setup. They provided the meat, and I provided the firepower. Liu's appearance was an unexpected bonus. When the time eventually came to face off against Wang Shi, I wouldn't have to rely solely on my bone chills. Using time still was a heavy cost, and having Liu as a wild card meant I could save a few precious seconds of my life force. Thinking about it made me grin. I really was a master of time management. The next day, I didn't wake up until noon. It was supposed to be a hunting day, but Old Tan insisted I rest for another 24 hours, claiming he was worried about my health. There wasn't exactly a nightlife scene in Dusty Town, so I spent most of the morning sleeping. After a boring lunch, I stepped out onto the streets. These streets were really just dirt paths carved out by thousands of footsteps. Low, crumbling houses lined the roads. Since it was the peak of summer, People were sprawled out in the shadows of the alleys just to catch a breeze. "Vice Commander Bai," a passerby called out, his face covered in soot, but his eyes full of awe. Word of my promotion and my new weapon had spread fast. The town was small, and I had become a local celebrity overnight. I walked with a swagger, soaking in the stares. Compared to the numb, lifeless expressions of the villagers, I felt like a burst of color in a black and white photograph. My mood improved even more when I checked my internal clock. My stored time had increased by another minute. I was at 4 minutes and 40 seconds now, even after Liu wasted 10 seconds of my life yesterday. Suddenly, screams erupted from the distance. "They're coming. The hounds are attacking. The mutated beasts are breaching the perimeter." I looked toward the main gate and saw several residents running for their lives, their clothes in tatters. I reached out and grabbed one of them by the collar. Instead of fear, I felt a surge of excitement. "What's happening?" I asked. "The beasts," the man stammered, his face pale as a sheet. "They've gone mad. They're storming the town." My grip tightened. Storming the town? I was just complaining about being bored, and now the prey was delivering itself to my doorstep. This was even better than hunting. I wouldn't even have to leave the walls to find them. But a small part of me wondered why they were attacking so suddenly. Tanjia arrived a moment later, leading a squad of armed thugs. "Get to the gate." "Move it." He spotted me and waved frantically. "Vice Commander, let's go." I pulled out the bone chills, feeling the familiar cold seep into my palm, and followed him up the ramparts. When we reached the top of the wall, I saw them. Nearly 100 hounds were charging across the wasteland, led by the massive Hound King. "Why now?" Tanjia whispered, his voice trembling. "Why would they risk a frontal assault?" The town gates were sturdy, but they wouldn't hold against 100 mutated monsters if they were truly desperate. Usually, the beasts were smart enough to avoid a direct fight against 800 humans, but something had changed. "We don't know," a guard shouted, trembling as he loaded his rifle. "They just appeared out of the dust and started sprinting." "Don't panic," a cold voice rang out. Wang Shi climbed onto the wall, surrounded by his own men. "The wall gives us the high ground. As long as Vice Commander Bai can hold the line, we'll turn the entrance into a graveyard." Tanjia looked at me, his eyes full of fake concern. "I just hope his body can take the strain." I let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "Keep your mouth shut if you don't have anything useful to say, Tan. I'll be alive long after you're buried." My time was growing. My power was growing. I didn't even feel like calling him Old Tan anymore. Tanjia's face flushed with anger, but he knew better than to snap back. Without me, they were all dead meat. He turned his frustration on his men instead, screaming at them to take their positions and prepare to fire. I moved to the center of the wall and raised the bone chills. The pack was getting closer. Through the swirling sand, I finally got a clear look at the Hound King. It was over 2 meters tall, covered in translucent, dark purple skin. Beneath that thin membrane, thick red veins pulsed and twisted like worms. A fist-sized purple tumor sat atop its head, throbbing with every stride. I didn't fire yet. Standard pistols only had a range of 50 meters. The bone chills could hit something 200 meters away, but my aim was still legendary for all the wrong reasons. I was a master of hitting everything except my target. I needed the others to fire first, to wound the beasts and slow them down. Once they were close enough that I couldn't miss, I'd finish them. "Ready," Tanjia shouted, raising his hand to signal the volley. "Wait," I barked. Tanjia glared at me, thinking I was trying to undermine his authority again. But I wasn't looking at him. I was staring past the hounds, toward the horizon where the sandstorm was thickest. "Put your guns down," I said calmly, tucking my weapon away. "What are you talking about?" Tanjia hissed. "They're right there. The hounds aren't the problem," I replied, my eyes locked on the dust clouds in the rear. Before Tanjia could explode, a guard pointed and screamed. "Look, they're turning." The entire pack of hounds, which had looked ready to tear the gates down, suddenly veered off. They skirted the edge of the town, running as fast as their legs could carry them, disappearing toward the far hills. They weren't attacking us. They were fleeing. The guards cheered, thinking the monsters were scared of our defense. But Wang Shi and Tanjia weren't smiling. They knew better. "Vice Commander," Wang Shi said, his voice heavy with dread. "What did you see?" My years of survival experience told me one thing. Those hounds weren't launching an assault. They were running for their lives. "They're retreating," I said, my voice flat. The color drained from everyone's faces. If those vicious hounds were acting like whipped curs, what kind of nightmare was chasing them? Panic spread through the ranks like a virus. The guards looked to their leaders for hope, but Tanjie and Wangxi looked just as terrified as the men they led. Tanjie forced a nervous laugh. Maybe the Dawn City army is nearby? Maybe they scared the pack off. "The army is nothing compared to a mutation," Wangxi muttered, his eyes dark. "Shut up. It's here." I looked up at the horizon. A faint humming sound reached my ears. It was high-pitched, vibrating at a frequency that seemed to pierce right through my skull and rattle my soul. "What is that?" someone screamed. The buzzing grew louder. It sounded like a live power line at first, but then it shifted. It was the sound of thousands of wings. Small black dots appeared against the clouds, multiplying until they blotted out the white. The sky looked like it was being devoured by a swarm of locusts, but these were much larger. The sound became a deafening roar of screeching and flapping. "Gray sparrows," a guard shrieked. "It's a swarm. Run. Dusty Town is finished." The crowd broke. The guards, the thugs, the survivors, they all turned and bolted, ignoring their commanders. I narrowed my eyes, watching the swarm descend. In the old world, sparrows were harmless. Here, they were monsters. They were the size of eagles, with leathery gray skin, lifeless white eyes, and talons that looked like polished steel. There were thousands of them. 1,000 eagles circling a small town meant the sun was effectively blotted out. The shadows they cast turned the ground into a flickering mosaic of gray and black. This was bad. Individually, a sparrow was no match for a hound. But there were too many of them, and they had the sky. I had the bone chills, and I could freeze time, but I couldn't fly. If I stayed out in the open, I'd be pecked to the bone before I could blink. I didn't trust my aim enough to pick them off one by one, especially not with my life force on the line. I needed cover. I needed a plan. I leaped off the wall and started sprinting. My physical stats had been boosted by the weapon, making me faster than the panicked mob. I blew past the screaming guards, but I wasn't the first to run. Tanjie and Wangxi were already halfway across the district. They knew the town walls were useless against an aerial massacre. A scream tore through the air behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I heard the whistle of a diving predator and the sickening crunch of a beak puncturing a human skull. The sparrows were harvesting us like insects. Gunshots rang out, desperate, disorganized, and useless. People were diving into wooden shacks, but those thin walls wouldn't hold. Mutated monsters didn't just have bigger bodies. They had cruel, predatory brains. I didn't head for the nearest house. I ran straight for the Tire Tavern. That was Tangia's stronghold. It was reinforced, and more importantly, it was where they kept the food, the water, and the ammo. Tangia hadn't given me many bullets, thinking I wouldn't live long enough to use them. I intended to prove him wrong. A sharp whistle cut through the air directly above me. Something was coming down fast. I didn't turn, I didn't dodge. I felt the killing intent locking onto the back of my neck. I was the only thing still moving in the street. I was the perfect target. I didn't have a choice. I triggered the ability. A brilliant, golden clock face manifested beneath my feet. The gears of the universe ground to a halt. The screaming, the flapping, and the wind vanished instantly. The only sound left was the ragged rhythm of my own breathing. I skidded another 2 meters forward, my momentum carrying me through the frozen world. I couldn't have turned around at that speed without falling, which was why I'd waited for the time stop. I turned back and came face to face with a nightmare. A gray sparrow was frozen 3 meters above the ground, its wings spread wide, its steel talons inches from my face. Its pale, dead eyes stared right through me. If I had been a second slower, my skull would have been cracked open like an egg. Anger flared in my chest. "You want my head?" I hissed. "Take this instead." I slammed around into the chamber of the bone chills and pressed the muzzle against the bird's throat. Even I couldn't miss at this range. I pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. Or rather, something strange happened. A blood-red bullet emerged from the barrel and stopped dead 2 centimeters away. It just hung there in the air, glowing with a lethal light. I froze, staring at it. Then it clicked. I had stopped time for the entire world. Anything that left my physical contact became part of the frozen environment. The bullet wasn't a part of me anymore, so it couldn't move. I stepped back, putting some distance between me and the bird, and released the flow of time. Zip! The red streak vanished. A microsecond later, the sparrow's head disintegrated in a spray of gray feathers and black blood. The headless carcass flailed once and slumped into the dirt. I let out a breath, feeling the familiar drain on my vitality. The gun worked, but it was going to be a complicated fight. I looked up at the thousands of shadows circling above. I needed more bullets, and I needed them now. I didn't look back. I just ran. The streets of Dusty Town were empty now. Or, more accurately, there were no living people left besides me. In just a few minutes, thousands of gray sparrows had turned the town into a slaughterhouse. Hundreds were already dead. Some birds perched on corpses, tearing away strips of flesh, while others smashed through windows to get at the screaming families hiding inside. A dozen of them spotted me, the only person still moving in the open, and dived. Their pale eyes locked onto me as they beat their wings in unison. I ducked into a narrow alleyway between two crumbling houses. The tight space worked in my favor. They couldn't swarm me all at once. They had to line up to die. I stopped, planting my feet, a surge of raw violence rising in my chest. I raised the bone chills and waited. 10 meters. 5 meters. 3. Bang. Flash and blood erupted simultaneously. The lead sparrow's head vanished, and its headless body slammed into the dirt, sliding across the ground until it hit my boots. I didn't use the time stop this time. In this narrow corridor, they were flying in a straight line. I couldn't miss. As the bone chills drank, a surge of warm energy flowed back into my arm, knitting my strength together. I felt stronger. Meaner. A cruel grin twisted my lips. Come on, I hissed. Become my strength. Asterisk bang. Bang. Asterisk. Bang. Asterisk. The revolver roared again and again. Muzzle flashes illuminated the dark alley, lighting up my face, which was now splattered with black ichor. Soon, the ground at my feet was carpeted with feathered carcasses. The stench of rot and iron was overwhelming, but more birds kept coming, fearless and suicidal. Time out, I whispered. I acted as the judge of this battlefield. With one command, the world froze. A sharp talon stayed suspended just inches from my eyes. I could literally count the individual feathers on the bird's wing. In the silence of the frozen alley, I lowered my head and began to reload with blood-stained hands. 1 bullet. 2. 6. I snapped the cylinder shut with a metallic click and looked up. Let's keep going. I emptied the cylinder again, but as the last bird fell, I realized I was out of ammo. I turned and bolted. My physical stats had improved again thanks to the gun's feedback, but I still couldn't outrun a bird in a straight line. Evolution gave them wings. It only gave me a bad attitude. I had to burn more energy using short bursts of time stops just to shake them off. I finally reached the tire tavern, but the heavy door was bolted shut. I pushed against it, catching a glimpse through the crack. Tables and chairs were piled high against the entrance. Someone had barricaded it from the inside. Open up, I shouted. No one answered. I kicked the door hard, the wood groaning. Finally, a voice drifted out. Go away. You'll bring the birds here. I recognized that voice. It was Old Wong, the tavern owner. He was one of Tangia's men, an older guy who liked to read pre-catastrophe books and complain about not being born in a more civilized era. He usually stayed out of the gang's dirty business, preferring his wine and his history. Old Wong, it's me, Bai Yi. Open the door. I need ammunition to deal with these things. I know it's you, Bai Yi. Old Wong's voice was trembling, high-pitched with terror. But I can't open it. What if a sparrow gets in? Don't blame me for leaving you out there. I just want to live. I don't owe you anything. I stopped kicking. I stood silently in front of the door. Above me, 5 more sparrows were already circling, their eyes fixed on my head. Open the door, I said, my voice dropping to a cold, flat tone. This is the last time I'm asking. The panic inside seemed to snap something in Old Wong. He started screaming at the door. You think you're a big shot just because they called you vice commander? You're just a lucky brat. You haven't even read a book. Who are you to give me orders? I didn't respond to his rant. The only sound was the fluttering of wings as the 5 shadows dived. Inside, Old Wong's voice died out, replaced by the sound of him whimpering in a corner, too terrified to even look up. The birds came at me from 5 different angles, sealing off every exit. I pulled a combat knife from my leggings, my eyes narrowing. I wasn't worried about the birds. Once they got close, a single second of frozen time would let me butcher them all. What pissed me off was Old Wong. Without those bullets, I couldn't use the bone chills to boost my vitality. I was wasting time. Fine, I muttered. Don't open it. Once I'm done with these pests, I'll burn this tavern to the ground and see if you feel like staying inside then. The birds shrieked, diving like 5 streaks of gray lightning. I gripped my knife, waiting for the perfect moment. Suddenly, a massive boom echoed through the air. In an instant, the 5 sparrows were hit by what looked like an invisible sledgehammer. Crunch! They exploded in midair, a rain of gray feathers and shredded meat falling around me. I spun to my right, looking toward the corner of a nearby house. Liu was standing there, his right hand lowered, gasping for breath. He looked terrible, sweat poured down his face, and he was clutching his arm in agony. That last move had clearly reopened his old wounds. I ran over to him. You okay? I'm not dead yet. Liu managed a weak smile. You're looking for these, right? He gestured to a bulging burlap sack behind him. I looked at it, then back at him. You robbed the tire tavern? Liu gave a raspy chuckle. I have a grudge against Wang Shi, so I had to hide in the East District. When I saw the birds hitting the town, I knew things were going south. I used my magic hand to slip in and grab the essentials before Old Wong could finish his barricade. He opened the bag. It was packed with guns, crates of ammo, and survival supplies. With this, Liu whispered, we have enough to get out of Dusty Town. I looked at him, confused. You could have run on your own. Why wait for me? Liu looked surprised I'd even ask. Why wouldn't I? I told you. I respect you. You risked your life for this town, and you agreed to work with me. Besides, you've got a forbidden object. If we're going to survive the wasteland, we're better off together. I looked at Liu and laughed. You never went to school, did you? Liu blinked, looking more confused than ever. Yeah, I didn't. Why are you asking me that now? Nothing, I said, checking my gear. Old Wong went to school. He's actually lived in Dawn City before. People around here consider him one of the few cultured guys in Dusty Town. But for a smart man, he's a real piece of work. He wouldn't even open the door for us. I shook my head, realizing the absurdity of the moment. Anyway, why am I chatting with you? This place isn't safe. Let's move. I didn't actually start running, though. Instead, I stood there, calmly sliding bullets into the cylinder of my revolver one by one. Go. Move. Liu urged, his eyes darting around. Click. The cylinder snapped shut. I looked up at him with a defiant, jagged grin. No rush. Liu's eyes widened. You're not actually staying to save the people of this town, are you? No, I said. Then what the hell are you doing? He looked back at the sky. The swarm of bone sparrows was getting thicker, circling closer to our position. When he looked back at me, my smile had turned sharp, like the edge of a blade. I'm going to kill them all, I said. Are you joking? I never joke. The hell you don't. Last time you called me Li Zhua and told me I had to break my right hand to become an awakened. Shut up, I snapped. I led Liu toward the alleyway right next to the tire tavern. You protect me, I commanded. I'll take care of the birds. Liu hesitated, but before he could argue, the first wave of sparrows dived. Asterisk bang, bang, bang. Asterisk the gunfire was relentless. One by one, the gray birds plummeted into the alley. Their feathers drifted through the air like toxic dandelions. For a moment, the narrow strip of sky above us seemed to be raining gray death. Whenever a bird tried to sneak up from behind, Liu's invisible magic hand slammed into them. Even these mutated beasts couldn't defend against an attack they couldn't see. Inside the tire tavern, Old Wong was curled up behind the bar, pressing his hands over his ears. He was terrified of the shrieks and the gunfire. He knew it was me out there. He also knew I was a dead man. No one person could fight that many birds. To him, it was just a matter of time before I was shredded. I'm not wrong, Old Wong whispered to himself, his voice trembling. I want to live. He's just a wasteland brat who hasn't even read a book. Only those stupid fishermen look up to him. If I had a forbidden object, I could kill monsters too. I could be the hero. He started talking faster, trying to convince himself. He wants bullets for the birds? Who does he think he is? Even the commander can't save this town. He's no hero. He's lying. He just wants me to open the door so he can hide. He's probably terrified. Thump. Old Wong jumped like a startled rabbit. He looked toward the window and froze. A pair of pale, lifeless eyes was staring back at him through the glass. His heart nearly stopped. Asterisk thud. 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 The sparrows began slamming their bodies against the window. Each impact felt like a hammer hitting his chest. Cracks spider-webbed across the glass. The junk he had piled up to barricade the window began to slide and scatter. Stop it. Go eat Bai Yi. He's right outside. Old Wong screamed. He was too paralyzed by fear to get up and reinforce the window. He could only pray. But in this world, prayer is useless. Crash. The glass shattered. A sparrow the size of an eagle squeezed through the gap. Its dead eyes locked onto Old Wong. He let out a pathetic shriek and scrambled away. He tried to run, but the tavern was a maze of his own making. The sparrow flapped its wings, chasing him through the shadows. Ironically, the very things Old Wong hated saved his life for a few seconds. The decorative tires hanging from the pillars and walls cramped the bird's flight path, slowing it down. He had always sworn that once he made enough money, he'd throw those trashy tires away. Now he realized he had trapped himself. Every exit was blocked by his own barricades. Desperate, he scrambled toward the front door, frantically tearing away the chairs and tables he had piled there. He could still hear gunfire outside. He's not dead. Bai Yi is still alive. He has the weapon. He can save me. Rip. Talons tore through the skin on Old Wong's back. 3 deep gashes opened up, and he howled in agony. He started grabbing chairs and hurling them at the bird. It didn't do much besides knock a few feathers loose, but it bought him enough time. His hands were sliced open by splinters and rusted nails, but the adrenaline masked the pain. Finally, the last obstacle was cleared. The door swung open. Old Wong stumbled out, collapsing into the dirt outside. He scrambled to his knees, his eyes darting around wildly, searching for me. But the gunfire had stopped. Silence. The gun stopped. He whimpered. He's dead. Bai Yi is dead. Help. Somebody help me. The sparrow flew out of the tavern right behind him. It dove, its metallic talons sinking deep into the meat of his arm. Old Wong thrashed and screamed, his face twisted in pure, raw terror. Then, footsteps echoed from the alley. A glimmer of hope ignited in Old Wong's eyes. He looked up and saw me. I was walking out of the shadows, my revolver in hand. Bye, he started to scream. Oh, I interrupted, my voice casual and light. If it isn't Old Wong. Bai Yi, save me. Please, save me. He was clutching the bird's talons, begging with the desperation of a dying man. I didn't rush. I slowly opened the cylinder of my revolver and flicked it. 6 spent brass casings hit the ground with a rhythmic clink, clink, clink. Call me Vice Commander Bai, I said. I pulled out my last few bullets and began loading them, one by one. Vice Commander Bai, please. I beg you. Old Wong's face was turning purple from the strain, the capillaries in his eyes bursting. He looked like a monster himself. I flicked the cylinder shut with a sharp snap. Old Wong watched me with wide, expectant eyes as I slowly raised the gun and aimed it at the sparrow. Then, I did a flashy gun spin and holstered the weapon. The hope on Old Wong's face turned to stone. I tilted my head. A drop of sparrow blood ran down my jawline, making my smile look even more predatory. I shrugged, showing no remorse at all. Sorry, Old Wong. Don't blame me for standing by. After all, I have no obligation to save you. My grin widened, baring my teeth. No, you can't. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Old Wong's screams turned into guttural roars of pain as the bird began to tear him open. It started pecking at his insides like a chicken eating grain. Liu walked out of the alley behind me, clutching his injured arm, looking exhausted. You're really not going to save him? He said he's sorry. I shook my head slowly. He's not sorry for what he did. He's just sorry he's about to die. Liu sighed. I always thought Old Wong was one of the few good ones. He was educated. He understood how things used to be. He wanted civilization back. Being educated doesn't make you a good person, I said. There's an old saying. The most loyal are often the simple, while the most treacherous are those who read the most. Just because someone craves a civilized world doesn't mean they are civilized themselves. Liu stared at me. He didn't quite get the quote, but he had a feeling I was insulting him, too. What did you call me? A dog killer? I asked, glancing at Liu. Well, you definitely killed more of them than anyone else, he muttered. I didn't argue. You'll understand later. I pulled out bone chills and aimed it at the sparrow currently feasting on old Wang's corpse. With a dull thud, the bird collapsed right into the old man's arms, dead. Hey, Liu, the man shouted, his voice thick with anger. I know your name, Liu, I said, cutting him off. Now shut up. What's the plan? The gunfire from the West District had stopped. It sounded like Wang Shi and his men had finally run out of bullets. I checked my own weapon. I had 3 shots left. Just 3. I looked up at the sky. Hundreds of sparrows were still circling the West District, diving into houses to drag people out. The area around the Tire Tavern was quiet only because there weren't many people here to eat. That was the whole reason I dragged Liu to this spot, to get away from the crowd. You only have 3 rounds left, Liu said, his voice trembling. How are we supposed to save them? I looked at him like he was an idiot. Save them? When did I say I was going to save them? Liu froze. But you're the one always shouting about protecting Dusty Town. You're the vice commander. You're just going to leave them. I didn't answer. I was already planning my retreat. I had hunted those sparrows to harvest their vitality and boost my own strength. Now that I was down to 3 shots, the risk outweighed the reward. More importantly, I checked my internal clock. I had 1 minute and 19 seconds of life left. Getting to the tavern had taken too much time. 1 minute was my psychological red line. If my remaining life dipped below 60 seconds, I wouldn't even be able to sleep at night. Still, the harvest had been good. My physical fitness had surged again. I felt strong enough to match Tanjia, the leader who had taken gene enhancement serums. Of course, if we actually fought without weapons, he'd still win. He didn't just have strength. He had those steel quills growing out of his skin. Besides, at this level, sparrow blood wasn't doing much for me anymore. I needed to hunt stronger mutated beasts to keep growing. If you're not saving them, let's get out of here, Liu suggested. He was at his limit, both mentally and physically. I shook my head. Running is the stupidest thing we could do. We can't outrun those birds. In the open wasteland, we'd be target practice. We need to find a solid building and wait them out. Fine. Whatever you say, Liu said. He knew I was a seasoned wasteland hunter. He trusted my judgment. We skipped the Tire Tavern. It was sturdy, but it had too many windows, and most of them were already broken. Instead, we spotted a brick house in the northwest corner. We just had to cross the street to get there. We bolted. A few sparrows spotted us and dived. Liu groaned, forcing his right hand up. An invisible force slammed into the air, creating a wall. The birds crashed into it like they'd hit solid glass, tumbling toward the ground. I didn't waste the opening. Bang, bang, bang. 3 shots. 3 dead birds. Our teamwork was getting better, but I was officially out of ammo. 2 more sparrows were already picking themselves up from the dirt. I holstered bone chills and drew my dagger. I had to finish them before we entered the house, or they'd just tear the roof off while we were inside. Damn it. It hurts. Liu suddenly screamed. His right arm dropped limply to his side. He clutched his head with his left hand, his face contorting in agony. What's wrong? I frowned. My mental strength, it's overdrawn, he gasped. Go. Get inside. I can't hold them. Stay back, I said, flipping my dagger into a reverse grip. I watched the 2 sparrows. They shook their heads, their talons digging into the dirt. Then, they launched themselves like gray streaks of lightning. I didn't use my time stop ability. With my current stats, I could handle 2 birds manually. But just as I was about to strike, I heard a sound from the rooftops. It was a sharp, rhythmic tapping, like a horse's hooves on stone. A figure blurred into my vision, dropping from the sky. It was a woman clad in black armor with polished silver plates. She didn't just land. She arrived with a flash of sword light that looked like electricity. Shing! In a heartbeat, the 2 sparrows were sliced clean in half. Blood sprayed the dirt as the woman landed gracefully between me and the carcasses. I stiffened. That sword was fast. Too fast. Even with my enhanced reflexes, I could usually track the trajectory of a bullet. But I hadn't even seen her draw. Her blade was faster than sound. Was she an awakened? Or a high-level Gene soldier? The woman turned around. She wore a featureless silver mask that covered her entire face, leaving only two hollowed-out eye sockets. Through them, I saw eyes as clear as mirrors, a pale, striking hazel. She didn't speak. She just stood there, watching me through the dust and blood. The wind caught her long black hair, sending a strand curling around her slender waist. Her hand stayed on the hilt of a silver rapier. The blade was thin, elegant, and etched with flowing cloud patterns. I narrowed my eyes. I didn't know who she was or what she wanted. All I knew was that at this distance, I had to be ready. If she moved, I'd have to trigger my time stop instantly, or I'd be dead before I could blink. Suddenly, her arm moved. My heart skipped, but she wasn't aiming for me. A sparrow had been lurking in the shadows behind her, launching a silent ambush. Without even looking back, she raised the silver sword over her right shoulder. Poochie. The sparrow impaled itself on the tip of her blade, looking like a piece of meat on a skewer. She held the sword casually over her shoulder, the movement fluid and effortless. I felt a twitch in my eyelid. I wanted to curse. Damn, that was cool. Is she trying to get herself killed being that flashy? With a flick of her wrist, she shook the bird's carcass off. The blood slid right off the polished silver blade, leaving it spotless. Those hazel eyes gave me one last deep look before she turned away. She leaped, her tall, lithe figure landing on a nearby roof like a swallow. In seconds, she was sprinting toward the West District, heading straight for the swarm. It's her. Liu gasped from the doorway of the brick house. You know her? I asked, not taking my eyes off the rooftop. Liu shook his head. No, I don't know her name. But I've seen her. I spent some time in History Town a while back. It was under attack by mutated beasts, and she appeared out of nowhere and slaughtered them all. I frowned. A specialist who hunts monsters? It seemed her goal was to protect the people of the wasteland settlements. I looked toward the West District. The silver-armored knight was already diving into the heart of the storm. The woman leaped into the air. She dove straight into the swarm of hundreds of gray sparrows, disappearing into a cloud of wings so thick it blocked out the sun. The screeching of 1,000 birds was deafening, a piercing wall of sound that felt like needles in my ears. Then, the silver cross-sword moved. A sound like a dragon's cry cut through the shrieks, clear and cold. She twisted her body mid-air, her wrists snapping tight as the blade carved brilliant silver arcs through the sky. Her silver mask caught the light, gleaming alongside the edge of her sword. Her black hair danced against the dark hem of her knight's armor as she spun. It looked like rain. But it wasn't water falling, it was the sparrows. I watched from the shadows, stunned. Tanjie and Wang Shi were huddled in the house, their faces pale with shock. They had run out of bullets. They had lost so many men. They were ready to die. But now, this woman had dropped from the sky like a savior. Her movements were terrifyingly fast, her swordsmanship divine. Everywhere she passed, the birds fell. There was no messy slaughter, no spray of gore. It looked like she was dancing in the middle of a storm. In seconds, the gray clouds vanished. The town was clear. The woman landed in a pile of gray feathers, her wrist flicking as she spun the silver sword and slammed it perfectly back into its sheath. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. We all just stared. The swarm that had almost wiped us out had been dismantled in a matter of seconds. I'm alive, someone screamed from inside the house. The joy of surviving the nightmare broke the silence. Wang Shi and the others hesitated for a moment before stepping out. They looked at her with a mix of envy and pure terror, bowing their heads low. They knew that against someone this strong, their wooden houses were as flimsy as paper. It was better to show respect than to hide. Thank you for saving us, Great One, Tanjie said, his face twisting into a sycophantic smile. We can never repay you. The woman didn't answer. She just stood there, motionless, as if she were thinking. May we know your name? Wang Shi asked cautiously. Please don't misunderstand. We just want to know who our benefactor is so we can repay you later. No need for later. A cold, youthful voice drifted from behind the silver mask. You can repay me now. The voice was calm, like a lake on a windless morning. Clear and emotionless. Wangshi froze. He didn't expect her to be so young, and he definitely didn't expect her to be so blunt. Of course, Wangshi forced a laugh. Whatever you need, just say the word. The night girl held out her hand. Money. Wangshi and Tanjia looked at each other. They didn't even hesitate. They sent their underlings to grab every cent they had. They didn't know how much was enough, but life in the wasteland had taught them one thing. Give everything. Money can be earned again. Death is permanent. It's all here, Great One, Wangshi said, handing over a heavy bundle. He was careful not to let his fingers touch hers. She took the bag, felt its weight, and spoke 2 words. Silent Court. The name hit them like a lightning bolt. Wangshi and Tanjia stood frozen, their faces turning a sickly shade of white. The Silent Court? She's one of them. Wangshi started to stammer out a compliment, trying to suck up to her, but he realized she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. I felt my eyebrow twitch. Asterisk, why are you looking at me? I didn't ask for anything. Asterisk. Silent Court, she repeated, her hazel eyes locked on mine. It is an organization made of transcendent beings. Are you interested in joining? I tilted my head. Is your recruitment always this casual? You're a group of transcendents, yet you're asking me instead of a transcendent. I glanced at Liu, wondering if she had sensed something about him. Kyan, I muttered, testing a word. The girl's eyes showed a flicker of confusion. She didn't know the word. I have been observing you, she said. A surge of killing intent flared in my chest. Observing me? Does she know about my ability to stop time? That was my ultimate secret. If she knew, I couldn't let her leave. But her next words killed my bloodlust instantly. You aren't a transcendent, she said. But you are a good person. I heard what you said when you faced the pack of hunting dogs. I blinked. Did she just give me a good person card the first time we met? The Silent Court is for transcendents, she continued. But we value character more. We look for like-minded people. I frowned. Based on her actions, the Silent Court was clearly a hero organization. They did the right thing. They saved people. I'm not interested, I said firmly. I wasn't a selfless martyr. My life was already on a countdown. I didn't have time to go around playing paladin for the sake of justice. Fine, she said, nodding calmly. Her eyes swept over the rest of the group. The mutated beasts from the Black Mountains are restless. The dogs and sparrows were just the first wave. This place isn't safe anymore. If you want to live, leave. With that, she turned and walked away. Her silver armor disappeared into the distance, leaving us in a town filled with silence and corpses. Out of 800 people in Dusty Town, only 300 were left. The survivors looked at the blood-stained dirt, too numb to even cry. What happened at the Black Mountains? Tanjia whispered, his voice trembling. More monsters? You've got to be kidding me. Someone from the Silent Court wouldn't lie about that, Wangshi said, swallowing hard. A powerhouse like her has no reason to trick us. Dusty Town is finished. We can't stay. The 2 leaders looked at each other. The rivalry was gone, replaced by pure survival instinct. Tanjia, Wangshi said quietly, we've fought for years, but we don't have a blood feud. In this situation, we have to team up if we want to live. What do you say? Tanjia nodded solemnly. Where do we go? Nowhere nearby is safe. Dawn City, Wangshi replied. It's the only place. But Dawn City doesn't take wastelanders, Tanjia argued. We need legal status, and that costs a fortune. That woman took all our cash. Even if she hadn't, it wouldn't be enough for everyone. Wangshi let out a cold, sharp laugh. Why are you still dreaming? You think we're taking everyone? We ditched the dead weight. And money isn't the problem. Have you forgotten? We still have the forbidden object. Tanjia's expression darkened. He looked toward me. There's something wrong with Bai Yi. After that fight with the sparrows, he's still full of energy. He doesn't look like someone whose life force was drained. He played us. You just noticed? Wangshi sneered. The kid is a bag of secrets. And it's not just him. Liu played me too. During the fight, I saw enough. Liu has become a transcendent. Those 2 have been working together behind our backs the whole time. Tanjia gasped. Then how are we supposed to take the forbidden object back? Wangshi didn't look worried. He just stared at me, his eyes narrowing into slits. A new transcendent? It had only been a few days. How strong could Liu really be? If he were actually that powerful, he wouldn't have needed to cooperate with me in secret. He would have just come for revenge himself. Besides, I saw his face. He was pale, clearly suffering from mental exhaustion. He wasn't a threat. As for me, Wang Shi guessed I had achieved what they called a perfect containment. Tanjia looked stunned when he heard that. He'd heard the term in rumors before, but his brain hadn't been working right since he started using genetic medicine. Usually, using a forbidden object required a heavy price. Perfect containment meant using it for free. It was a legend, something most people didn't believe in. It was like the difference between knowing how to fire a gun and the gun having feelings for you. It sounded like complete nonsense. But even if I had achieved the impossible, Wang Shi didn't care. Bone chills was powerful, but it needed bullets. Without them, it was just a heavy piece of scrap metal. This was their best chance. Dawn City needed transcendent test subjects, and a live one would fetch a massive price. Their plan was simple. Wang Shi would take Liu, Tanjia would take the forbidden object, and they'd both buy their way into the city to become honorable citizens. They looked at their subordinates, men who had no idea they were about to be discarded like trash. Then, Tanjia looked toward the East District spot where we had been standing. He froze. Where are Bai Yi and Liu? Wang Shi spun around. We were gone. Damn it. They're running. After them. They scrambled into their vehicles, splitting up to cut us off. Run? If we don't move now, we're dead. Liu clutched his right hand, hissing at me while I maintained a casual pace. We can't outrun them, I said calmly. They have cars. We have legs. Even if they were just beat-up off-road vehicles, 4 wheels were faster than 2. Instead of wasting energy running, I wanted to save my strength for the fight. We can't just wait here to die. Liu panicked. I'm drained. I can't use my abilities. You're out of bullets. What are we supposed to fight with? Right then, the roar of engines echoed behind us. Liu's face went from pale to ghostly white. He looked back to see a jeep tearing through the dirt, kicking up a massive cloud of yellow dust. It's over, he whispered. Mom, I'm sorry. Your son failed you. The tires screeched as the jeep drifted to a halt, blocking our path. Dust settled over us like a shroud. Tanjia hopped out, followed by 5 thugs. They weren't carrying guns anymore. They were out of ammo too. Instead, they gripped rusty machetes that glinted wickedly in the sun. In the wasteland, where medicine was non-existent, a cut from those tetanus blades was a death sentence. I knew there was no talking our way out of this. Liu was useless in a fight right now. He was just dead weight. Liu, I said, not looking back. They want me. You go. Okay. Bai Yi, I'll definitely avenge you. His voice trailed off as he sprinted away. He left a trail of dust so long it looked like he'd grown a tail. He was gone in a flash. I didn't blame him. He'd already risked his life to help me once. Expecting him to die with me was asking too much. He had a mother to take care of. Still, I couldn't help but think he ran a little too fast. But then, to my surprise, he came sprinting back. Why are you back? I asked, genuinely confused. Liu was gasping for air, his chest heaving, but his eyes were fixed. I'm a coward, he panted. But I'm more afraid of living the rest of my life hating myself for leaving a friend behind. I looked at him. His legs were shaking like leaves in the wind, but he stood right next to me. He'd clearly had a brutal internal struggle and chose to stay. Friends, huh? I smiled and patted his trembling shoulder. Relax. As long as I'm here, you won't die. There was something beautiful about his fear. A strong man being brave is expected, but a weak man turning back to face certain death? That's true courage. When your instincts scream at you to run, but you stay anyway, that means something. Then, another engine roared. A second jeep pulled up from the direction Liu had just tried to flee. Wang Shi stepped out, a mocking sneer on his face. Keep running, Liu. Go on. Wang Shi laughed. I knew you'd try to split up, so I circled around to block the exit. You almost had me. Liu gave me a very awkward, polite smile. Bai Yi, let me explain. Actually, stop, I cut him off. If you say another word, I'm going to hit you. I felt like an idiot. I'd almost been moved by his sacrifice. He didn't come back for me. He came back because he ran straight into Wang Shi's trap. Bai Yi, Hand over the forbidden object, and I might let you live, Tanjia barked, raising his machete. You only have yourself to blame, Wang Shi added. You had a chance to join the silent court, but you were too stupid to take it. If you were one of them, we wouldn't dare touch you. But you chose a dead end. I stood my ground, trapped between them. You guys seem really afraid of the silent court. Wang Shi didn't want to talk, but Tanjia couldn't help himself. People love to gloat when they think they've already won. You're just a bottom feeder who got lucky with a toy, Tanjia sneered. It makes sense you've never heard of them. The silent court is an extreme organization. Anyone in our world knows them. They claim to be justice, but they're just executioners. They kill anyone they label a criminal by the next morning. They're just a bunch of lunatics obsessed with the old world's idea of right and wrong. If the silent court actually followed their own standards, every single person in the wasteland would be dead. In this world, no one's hands are clean. It finally clicked why Tanjia and the others were so terrified of that organization. If that girl from the court ever found out what these thugs did on a daily basis, they would have been judged and executed long ago. The court represented judgment, but I still wondered why they called it silent. Enough talk, Wang Shi snapped. He was the cautious type, and he didn't want to give Li Yu any time to recover his powers. He wasn't about to risk his own skin yet, though. He signaled his men to test the waters first. Tanjia did the same. A dozen thugs armed with rusty machetes closed in, surrounding us from both sides. They moved slowly, eyes darting between my gun and Li Yu. They weren't sure if I had any bullets left, or if Li Yu was still capable of unleashing his supernatural abilities. I let out a long, heavy sigh. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. Look, I said, my voice calm as I caught their attention. We actually got along pretty well before this. There's no need for us to kill each other. To be honest, I really don't want to waste my time killing you. I paused, looking Tanjia dead in the eye. How about this? You all get on your knees and beg for mercy. If you do that, I'll let this go. Deal. Tanjia looked like he was about to burst a lung laughing. Do you even hear yourself? We should beg you. Bai Yi, I thought you were just playing dumb, but you're actually insane. Look around. Who do you think is in control here? The thugs joined in, their mocking laughter echoing through the ruins. They thought I was a joke. I didn't care about the noise. I just looked at them with total sincerity. Seriously, I whispered. Just kneel. I hate wasting time more than anything else. Tanjia's face twisted with rage. Kill him. The thugs lunged. Beside me, Li Yu's body went rigid. I'll handle Wang Shi, he hissed, his words coming out in a desperate rush. You take Tanjia. Whether we live or die is up to fate now. He let out a guttural roar and charged toward Wang Shi. His trembling right hand swung out, and a massive, invisible force slammed into the approaching thugs. They were sent flying, coughing up blood as if hit by a sledgehammer. Wang Shi. Die! Li Yu screamed. Sweat poured down his face as he struggled to lift his arm, as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. Then I heard it. A sickening crack. His right arm suddenly went limp, dangling like a piece of wet string. The bone had snapped again. The internal damage was too much. His magic hand had reached its limit just 3 meters away from his target. Despair washed over Li Yu's face. He was so close, but then he stopped. He noticed Wang Shi's expression. The cold, snake-like man wasn't looking at Li Yu with triumph. He looked like he had just seen a demon. His eyes were bulging, his face pale with a terror so deep it looked like he'd been dropped into an ice bath. Li Yu stood up straight, ignoring the agony in his arm. He thought he'd done it. He thought his display of power had broken Wang Shi's spirit. Wang Shi, Li Yu said, trying to sound like a cold-blooded killer. Blocking me was the biggest mistake of your life. Your mechanical arm is nothing compared to my power. Today, I'm going to. Excuse me, move aside. My voice cut through his monologue. I placed a hand on Li Yu's shoulder and gently pushed him. The sudden movement sent a jolt of pain through him that nearly made him scream, but he went silent the moment he looked back. He froze. His jaw dropped. Tanjia and his men weren't there anymore. Or rather, their bodies were, but their heads were gone. 6 headless corpses stood for a fraction of a second, geysers of blood spraying into the air before they finally collapsed. There had been no screams. No sound of a struggle. Just instant, silent death. Liu turned back to Wang Shi and realized the truth. Wang Shi wasn't scared of him. He was terrified of me. Wang Shi had seen it all. In his eyes, I had simply raised my dagger, and 6 men, including a powerful leader like Tan Jie, had been decapitated in the blink of an eye. They were still in mid-charge when their lives ended. This is impossible. Wang Shi screamed, his eyes bloodshot. What did you do to them? I walked past Liu, my blood-stained dagger dripping onto the dry earth. Asterisk drip. Drip. Asterisk. I gave you a chance to kneel, I said, my voice like ice. Why didn't you listen? Why did you have to force my hand? I only had 1 minute of power left. I wasn't enjoying the slaughter. I was just angry that these idiots were eating into my clock. You're an awakened too? Wang Shi stammered. It was the only explanation. To kill 6 people so fast the eye couldn't even register the movement. That was a level of power beyond anything he'd ever seen. Even the girl from the silent court showed her blade when she struck. I hadn't shown anything. I stopped in front of him. Wang Shi looked at me, a scrawny kid in rags, and felt a fear so primal he couldn't even lift his weapon. Thud. He fell to his knees, trembling violently. Spare me, please. I'll leave. I'll go so far away you'll never see me again. Now you want to beg? I kicked him square in the head. Even through his reinforced alloy skull, the force of the blow sent his vision swimming. He was convinced now. Only a high-level awakened could possess that kind of raw physical strength. I have money, Wang Shi shrieked, desperate to find a way out. I have a fortune hidden inside my mechanical arm. Only I know the code. If you let me live, it's all yours. I leaned down, a cruel smile spreading across my face. Your money was stolen by the silent court, wasn't it? I asked. No, I have more. I kept a secret stash. He yelled. I let out a short, dark laugh. Here's the thing, Wang Shi. If I kill you, that money is mine anyway. You're trying to buy your life with my own property. That's not how this works. My mind was racing, but my hands were steady. A cold light flashed through the air. The sharp blade of my dagger sliced clean through Wang Shi's neck. His head tumbled to the ground, his expression frozen in a mask of pure shock. He never expected me to move so fast. He thought he could buy his way out, but I didn't give him the chance to reach for his mechanical arm. Wang Shi was a snake. He was twice as smart and 10 times as devious as Tan Jie. I wasn't about to take a gamble on whether he was reaching for money or a hidden weapon. If I didn't use my time-stop ability perfectly, I'd be dead. I wasn't going to let some arrogant thug make me flip a coin with my life. As soon as his body hit the dirt, I knelt down and started cutting. I needed to see if there really was money in that arm. It wasn't that I was greedy. I was just tired of being broke. In this world, being penniless was a death sentence. How do you open this thing? I muttered, frustrated. The mechanical arm was covered in blood and grime. My dagger couldn't even scratch the alloy casing, and I didn't know the first thing about mechanics. Liu walked over, his face a mess of conflicting emotions. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. You're an awakened too, aren't you? If I say no, would you believe me? I asked, looking up from the bloody limb. Liu gave me a look that said, do I look like an idiot? He swallowed hard. What's your power? How did you kill all those people in a heartbeat? Not telling, I replied shortly. I wasn't technically an awakened. I was just a guy from another world where time flowed differently, but explaining that was too much work. That's not fair, Liu grumbled. I told you mine. I thought we were friends. I let out a cold laugh. Back at the start, I was afraid of dying. Now, I'm just afraid of living the rest of my life as a loser. All right, I get it. Liu waved his good hand, his face turning red. Let me help you with that arm. We spent the next 20 minutes sweating and cursing. By the time we were done, the high-tech mechanical arm was nothing but a pile of scrap metal. I stared at the pieces and felt my blood boil. Wang Shi, you lying bastard. I yelled. There wasn't a single cent inside. No money, no hidden treasure. Just a bunch of tiny, intricate spring-loaded needles meant for a surprise attack. I'd wasted my time. I kicked the scrap metal into the dirt and climbed into the off-road vehicle Tan Jie had left behind. Liu hopped into the passenger seat, his eyes wide. You know how to drive? It's not that hard, I said, putting the car in gear. I didn't mention it took me 3 tries to pass my driving test back on Earth. Wait, why are you turning around? Liu shouted. Dawn City is that way. We're going back to Dusty Town, I said firmly. Are you crazy? Why go back there to die? I looked at him like he was the stupid one. It's almost dark. As a wasteland hunter, you should know that traveling at night is suicide. I wasn't lying. The wasteland was 10 times more dangerous after the sun went down. Even the most experienced hunters found a hole to crawl into before dusk. Plus, I only had 1 minute of powered time left. If we ran into a pack of monsters in the open desert, we were finished. At least the town had walls. We drove back through the swirling yellow sand. When we reached the main street, the silence was deafening. Gray feathers from the mutated birds drifted through the air like snow, settling near the hundreds of corpses lining the road. A rusted soda can rolled across the cracked pavement, making a hollow clink-clink sound as it passed Liyu's feet. Where is everyone? Liyu asked, his voice trembling. The town had survived the initial attack with 300 or 400 people left. Now it was a ghost town. I looked at the ground and saw hundreds of overlapping footprints leading toward the gates. They ran, I said. They saw the silent court girl. Then they saw the leaders chasing after us in cars. They thought the commanders were abandoning the town, so they panicked and fled. Cowards, Liu spat. He clutched his injured right arm. To him, his hand was his most precious possession, the key to his powers. They won't get far. Neither will we if we stay in the street, I said. We found a sturdy brick house and spent the next few hours barricading the doors and windows. Once we were settled, Liu pulled out some supplies he'd swiped from the tavern earlier. He had bottles of cheap booze and a stack of black, oily bars. Cockroach protein bars. I groaned, looking at the dark mass in my hand. You took the booze, but you didn't grab any meat? Meat rots, Liu said, taking a long swig of the foul-smelling liquor. Alcohol is a treasure. It gives you courage, kills pain, and disinfects wounds. You can survive without meat, but you can't survive the wasteland without a drink. He blew a smoke ring from a crumpled cigarette. And the tobacco? I asked. Better than gold, he smirked. Helps the nerves. I stared at the protein bar. I could see a stray cockroach leg sticking out of the side. I closed my eyes and forced myself to swallow a bite without chewing. It tasted like bitter dirt and old grease. I nearly gagged. Wow. You look like you just ate straight trash, Liu laughed. This is worse than trash, I hissed. I miss real food. Don't be so dramatic, Liu muttered. I've eaten these every day for years. You're forgetting your roots pretty fast. That's because you've never had anything better, I snapped. My mind drifted back to my old life, cold beer and spicy skewers at a street barbecue stall. I've had plenty of good things, Liu argued. Back when I was winning at the gambling dens, I ate like a king. Have you ever had curly hair noodles? What? They're amazing, he said, his eyes glazing over. The noodles are dried into a hard, wavy brick. You boil them in hot water until they turn golden and bouncy. If you're really rich, you drop an egg in there. That's city dweller food, man. Real luxury. I stared at him, realized he was talking about instant ramen, and sighed. This world was even more broken than I thought. I looked at Liu, my expression turning strange. The more he described those curly hair noodles, the more familiar they sounded. They weren't just similar to instant ramen. They were instant ramen. Watching Liu savor the memory with such longing made me feel a profound sense of displacement. I hadn't been in this world long, and my mind was still rooted in the civilized era. Back then, I dismissed instant ramen as cheap junk food. Now, in this wasteland, it was a legendary luxury that most people would never even see in their entire lives. I stayed silent, lost in thought. Liu gave me a dark, knowing smirk. He clearly thought his description of high society living had humbled me. What's the matter? Craving them now? He chuckled. Don't worry. Since you saved my life, once we get into Aurora City, I'll treat you. 1 bowl, 2 eggs. My treat. I really can't thank you enough, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Hey, no problem. We're brothers, Liu said, slapping his chest with a grand gesture, despite the fact that his pockets were as empty as his stomach. He paused, his expression turning curious. By the way, why didn't you join the Silent Court? Tanjie and his crew seemed terrified of them. That girl was clearly powerful, and she was a beauty. How could you turn her down? You could tell she was beautiful through a mask? I asked. For all you know, she's hiding something hideous. Nobody sane wears a mask 24/7. I pictured the night girl in my mind. She was tall, with long, straight black hair that reached her waist. Even from behind, she was a head-turner. That's where you're wrong, Liu argued, acting like a seasoned romantic. I've seen my share of women. You can't fake that kind of elegance. And she was definitely interested in you. Why else would she ignore a high-profile awaken like me and invite a nobody like you? You missed a chance to marry into the elite, kid. Childish, I muttered. I didn't have time for his adolescent fantasies. I was a god of this new era, holding the supreme authority over time itself. Even if my powers were sealed to a single minute a day, I still had my pride. Gods don't have time for romance. Everyone knows dating is just a massive waste of time. Hey, you still haven't answered me, Liu pressed. Why refuse her? She's got the background, the power, the looks. Wait, is it because you? Suddenly, I froze. I lunged toward the window, my eyes narrowing. What is it? Liu asked, startled by my sudden movement. Shut up and listen, I hissed, leaning against the frame. Vehicles are coming. A lot of them. Liu's face went pale. He scrambled up to join me, but he moved too fast, jarring his injured right hand. He winced, his features contorting in pain, but he didn't make a sound. He strained his ears and soon caught the heavy, rhythmic rumble of engines. Down in the streets of Dusty Town, 10 military transport trucks rolled in a single-file line. Each one was packed with soldiers armed to the teeth, at least 100 of them. Surrounding the trucks were over 200 bedraggled wastelanders, being driven forward like a flock of sheep. I scanned the crowd of civilians and recognized several faces. They were the residents of Dusty Town. They were back. The Eye of Apocalypse, Liu whispered in terror. I saw the emblem on the soldiers' uniforms. It was a stylized eye that seemed to contain the mysteries of the universe, embedded with star-like patterns and pierced by 3 silver lightning bolts. It was the mark of the Aurora City military. What's going on? I asked. Why is the army driving the residents back here? How should I know? Liu snapped back, his voice trembling. I cursed under my breath. I hated variables. I just wanted to stay quiet and accumulate more time, but the world wouldn't give me a moment's peace. Whatever these soldiers were here for, it wasn't going to be good. Stop the vehicles, a voice barked over a radio from the middle truck. It's getting dark. We rest here tonight. We move toward Black Mountain tomorrow. The convoy ground to a halt. They were setting up camp right in town. Even from a distance, my enhanced senses allowed me to catch the officer's words clearly. Black Mountain. Liu's eyes widened. Only a regular army would be brave enough to go there now with all those mutated beasts roaming around. What the hell is in that mountain? Why does Aurora City keep sending troops? Is it really just for the war? I pondered this. The 100-man squad didn't have heavy weapons or supply crates. They weren't equipped for a prolonged siege or a major battle. I was curious, but I wasn't about to go poking my nose in. I only had 1 minute of power left. I needed to keep a low profile. But why bring the residents? Liu whispered. Then, his face dropped as the realization hit him. We looked at each other, the same grim thought crossing our minds. Cannon fodder, I said. Suicide squad, Liu muttered at the same time. We weren't exactly in sync, but the meaning was the same. They were driving unarmed civilians toward a monster-infested mountain to use them as bait. Those bastards, Liu hissed, his disgust for the city soldiers boiling over. I'm a wastelander too. This is how they treat us. He slumped against the wall, his anger turning into a weary sorrow. This world is a joke. The big shots hide in their castles and start wars, and the commoners pay the price. His words hit home. The beast tide, the blockade, this new military arrival, it all stemmed from a single order given by someone powerful in Aurora City. The people of Dusty Town just wanted to survive, but they were being herded to their deaths for a cause they didn't even understand. In an era like this, most people have no choice, I said quietly. Every speck of dust from the times we live in falls like a mountain on the shoulders of an ordinary man. Liu looked at me, his eyes brightening as he repeated the phrase to himself, feeling the heavy weight of the words. Liu stared at me, repeating my words under his breath. He looked like he wanted to write them down, just so he could brag to someone later. I didn't know you were so cultured, Brother Yi, he whispered. Unlike me. All I can say is damn our luck. Show quiet, I hissed. My ears picked up a change in the military's movement outside. From the armored transport, an officer started barking orders. Teams 1 and 2, grab the thermal imagers. Check every building. I want to know if there are any living souls left in this town. Liyu's face went pale. He panicked, his voice trembling. We're dead. They're going to search the place. We have to hide. It's useless, I said, my eyes narrowing. I had wanted to stay hidden until they left, but the situation had changed. They have thermal imagers. What the hell is a thermal imager? Liu asked, his ignorance on full display. It sees the heat coming off your body in the dark, I explained. Hiding behind a wall won't do a thing. Liu bolted upright, his fear turning into desperate rage. If that's how it is, we fight. Brother Yi, with your power, you can hijack one of their trucks, right? We can just drive out of here. He was looking at me with total confidence. My display of power earlier had clearly gone to his head. I rolled my eyes at him. Now that we were in danger, he was calling me Brother Yi. Brother Yi, don't look at me like that, he whispered, trying to sound brave. I'm not the type to switch sides just to save my skin. Outside, the heavy thud of combat boots was getting closer. When do we move? Liu asked, his face turning serious. He glanced at his right hand, which was wrapped in thick bandages. He looked pained. Damn it. Ever since I became an awakened, this arm hasn't had a single day of rest. Move. I looked at him like he was crazy. We aren't moving. I only have 1 minute of power left. That's not enough to kill 100 soldiers. Even if I wanted to fight, I'd have to wait until after midnight when my energy resets. Liu gasped. Brother Yi, this isn't the time for jokes. If we don't fight, we're just waiting to die. I don't want to be dragged off as cannon fodder. I sighed and patted his shoulder with a look of deep disappointment. Young people are always so obsessed with fighting and killing. How do you expect to live long like that? Do you even know the way of the wasteland? Liu blinked, confused. The way of the wasteland. It's the philosophy of survival, I said, my voice solemn. It's a 16-word mantra. If the enemy is weak, I insult them. If the enemy is small, I bully them. If the enemy is fierce, I surrender. If the enemy is strong, I obey. Liu stood there, stunned. If the enemy is strong, I obey. Exactly. You're a fast learner, I said, feeling satisfied. I had already made up my mind. If this unit wanted cannon fodder, I'd play the part for a while. It was a few days' journey to the Black Mountains. Once my power was back and the time was right, I could do whatever I wanted. But Brother Yi, Liu whispered, what if they don't plan on letting us live at all? That's even simpler, I said with a shrug. If the enemy is that strong, I just die. I knelt down and started grabbing handfuls of dirt from the floor, rubbing it all over my face. Liu saw what I was doing and quickly followed suit. Just as we finished making ourselves look like miserable refugees, a soldier shouted from outside. 2 signatures in this building. The sound of rushing footsteps echoed as a squad swarmed toward the house. Liu was visibly shaking, but I stayed calm. I patted his shoulder one last time. To survive the wasteland, you must have a heart full of awe and humility. Remember that. Let it touch your soul. Then, while Liu watched in total disbelief, I walked straight toward the door. I raised my hands and shouted at the top of my lungs. Officers, don't shoot. We're on your side. The door was kicked open with a crash. A dozen rifles were instantly pointed at my chest. Who are you? Why were you hiding? A soldier barked. Sir, we're just honest citizens of Dusty Town, I said, slipping into my act instantly. When the monsters attacked, my brother and I were too scared to come out. Seeing the soldiers from Aurora City, it's like we've finally found our saviors. The soldiers didn't lower their guns. The residents of this town fled long ago. Why didn't you? My brother is injured, I said, pulling Liu forward. I gave his wounded right hand a sharp, hidden squeeze. He turned white and broke into a cold sweat instantly. It looked incredibly convincing. I was worried the journey would kill him, so we stayed to wait it out. Seeing Liu's genuine agony, the soldier lowered his guard slightly. He clicked his radio. Report. Found 2 wastelanders. Requesting instructions. Check for weapons. A cold, commanding voice crackled back. If they're clean, add them to the group. 2 soldiers stepped forward to frisk us. Liu kept shooting me panicked looks. He knew I had a forbidden object on me. I ignored him and let them search. A moment later, they found nothing. Follow us, the soldier ordered. We were led through the town toward a central gathering point. The military was busy setting up camp and pitched tents, while the surviving residents of Dusty Town were huddled in an open area, guarded by armed men. I scanned the crowd. Two figures among the soldiers stood out. One was an officer in a high-grade uniform, and the other was a young man carrying a silver metal case half his height. The officer looked to be in his 30s, his expression cold and arrogant. His arms and legs had been replaced by high-end machinery. The exposed joints glowed with a mercury-like light. It was far more advanced than anything Wangshi had. The man with the silver case looked more human, except for his eyes. They were the eyes of a hawk, golden-brown pupils that seemed to pierce through the darkness. I realized who they were, a high-level cyborg and a genie-volver. They were leagues ahead of anyone in Dusty Town. Report, sir. 2 wastelanders brought in. No weapons found. No signs of gene or mechanical modification, the soldiers reported. The officer gave us a bored, dismissive glance. We were covered in dirt and dressed in rags, looking no different from the other miserable refugees. He waved a hand impatiently. Give them numbers. Put them in the camp. Liu and I were handed crude number tags and shoved into the crowd. We blended in perfectly. The people around us were numb with grief and fear. We found a quiet corner and sat down. A few people looked at us, but with the dirt masking our faces, no one recognized me as the vice commander. As we settled in, Liu leaned closer, his voice barely a breath. Brother Yi, where is your weapon? I didn't see you throw it away. I didn't answer. The bone chills was still on me, of course. It was simple. When they searched my torso, I hid it in my pants. When they searched my legs, I used a split second of time stillness to move it back to my jacket. To them, I was just a harmless peasant. I leaned back against a crate. In this world, no one understood humility better than I did. I knew that in a crowd this size, there were bound to be people looking for a way out. All it would take was one desperate soul to sell me out to the officers, whispering that I was carrying a forbidden object just to earn a scrap of favor. That was exactly why I had spent so much effort on my disguise. Brother Yi, Liu whispered, looking down at the crude number tag in his hand. You're 258, and I'm 259. Why are they numbering us? Did I get here before you? I asked, cutting him a sharp look. Liu blinked, confused. No, we came in together. Then if you know we came in together, why are you asking me? I snapped. Go ask someone else. He muttered a few curses under his breath, but scurried off to mingle. A few minutes later, he returned, his face pale and grim. The numbers are for grouping, he whispered. 20 people to a group. We're supposed to watch each other. If one person tries to run, the soldiers will execute the entire group. Those bastards, they've made it so no one dares to move. I nodded thoughtfully. Go back. Find out why they're gathering so many people. I already had a guess, but I needed to be sure. Liu crept over to a nearby wastelander whose face was a mask of numb exhaustion. After being ignored a few times, Liu finally nudged a response out of him. The big shots from Shuguang City are taking us to Black Mountain, the man said, his voice hollow. They claim they're short-handed and need us to scout the path. They promise that if we succeed, they'll take us back to the city. Said we'd never have to struggle on the wasteland again. That sounds like a good deal, Liu said, faking excitement. We could actually become city dwellers. The man gave a tragic, bitter laugh. That lie only works on children. Anyone can enter Shuguang City if they have the money. Even if they're telling the truth, how many of us will actually survive Black Mountain? The man went silent after that, his eyes staring into the void. Liu shivered and crawled back to my side. Brother Yi, it's just like you thought. What do we do? Should we find a chance to run? Run. I looked at him. You need to look at this from a different perspective. I had no intention of running. Stepping into the wilderness at night was a death sentence. There was a reason this entire military convoy didn't dare to travel after dark. What perspective? Liu asked. We look like cannon fodder, I explained. But until we reach Black Mountain, we are actually being protected by this army. The mutated beasts are everywhere right now. Nowhere is safe. By staying with them, we don't have to worry about being eaten in our sleep. Liu's eyes lit up. You're right. Brother Yi, you really are brilliant. I finally understand what you meant about having a heart of awe and humility to live a long life. Enough talk. Get some rest, I said, lying flat on the dirt and closing my eyes. Time passed in the heavy silence of the camp. Then, the clock in the center of Dusty Town Square struck. Dawn, dawn, dawn. It was midnight. My eyes snapped open. I reached out and poked Liu, who was fast asleep. He jolted awake, blinking in the dark. What is it, Brother Yi? Get ready to move, I said, my voice low and cold. Liu froze. Move? Move where? We're killing them all. Liu stared at me, completely stunned. He thought I was joking, but when he saw the predatory gleam in my eyes, the blood drained from his face. Brother Yi, there are 2 of us. There are 100 soldiers with guns. Are you serious? He was shaking now, his mind racing back to the survival philosophy I'd taught him. Wait, you said the way to survive the wasteland was 16 words. If the enemy is weak, insult them. If they are small, bully them. If they are fierce, surrender. If they are strong, follow them. You said we had to be humble. Brother Yi, my dear brother, he pleaded, his voice cracking. This isn't what you said. What's the difference? I gave him a predatory grin. No one understands humility better than me. I can be humble while I'm digging their graves. Liu gaped at me. He looked like he was wondering if I had been replaced by a demon while I slept. But why, he hissed. What happens after we kill them? We take their trucks, their guns, and their money, I said simply. We leave at dawn. We sell the gear, get enough cash, and buy our way into Shiguang City as legal residents. Don't be impulsive. Liu was practically crying now. That officer and the hawk-eyed guy, they aren't normal. We aren't in danger right now. Why take the risk? I cut him off. You don't get it. We aren't in danger yet. But their plan is to push us into the fire pit of Black Mountain. I am a man of the world. I won't be coerced into a death trap. My mind is made up. I'm going to slip away and take out the 2 leaders. Once the camp falls into chaos, you move. We'll wipe them out from the inside. Before he could argue, I vanished into the shadows of the nearby ruins. Brother Yi, think about the 16 words. Liu whispered frantically, but I was already gone. He watched the darkness, and within seconds, he couldn't even see my silhouette. I moved like a ghost toward the command tents. There were sentries everywhere, but they were nothing to me. Time stillness. A strange ripple distorted the world. I moved like a sprinting leopard, crossing the open ground in a blur. I deactivated the power the moment I reached the cover of the inner circle to save my strength. My target was the largest tent in the center. I had seen the officer and the Genevolver enter it earlier. If I cut off the head, the body of the army would collapse. This wasn't just reckless bravado from my new powers. I knew that other Shiguang units were already at Black Mountain. If I waited until we joined the main force, escaping would be impossible. Plus, I needed the loot. Shiguang City was strict. Without a legal identity, I'd be a beggar. 100 high-grade rifles were sitting right in front of me. I wasn't going to let that wealth walk away. I pressed myself against the back of the command tent, blending into the shadows. Mr. Ng. The officer's low voice drifted through the fabric. There are rumors that the Manga project, established before the Great Catastrophe, is hidden inside Black Mountain. Do you think it's true? I froze. Manga project? Anything named after Pangu, the god who created the world in ancient myths, had to be massive. The Great Catastrophe happened 100 years ago. I had come from a time 200 years in the past. That meant my civilization had progressed for another century before whatever disaster struck and shattered humanity. I stayed silent, my heart racing, as I listened to the secrets of a lost age. This gap in history, the 200 years between my time and this nightmare, fascinated me. I suddenly wasn't in a hurry to kill them anymore. I wanted to hear what they had to say. Don't ask things you shouldn't, the young man, Mr. Ng, said coldly. I gripped my dagger, ready to strike if the conversation ended there. But the officer laughed it off. He pointed out that the news was already spreading across the country, so there was no point in hiding it from their own people. Mr. Ng stayed silent for a moment before finally speaking. He confirmed that there was a pre-catastrophe bunker hidden inside Black Mountain. It was designated as Shelter 189. The Manga project had been carried out right there. The officer's voice didn't waver. He had expected as much. He spoke of the legends, how the Manga project was supposed to be a new beginning for humanity after the Great Catastrophe. Mr. Ng confirmed the rumors. When the world started to fall apart, the elites, the scientists, the leaders, the best of the best, locked themselves away in shelters. They had limited resources, so only the top tier of humanity got a seat. They planned to wait out the storm and then use the Manga project to rebuild civilization. But they failed. 100 years had passed since the disaster, and the Manga project never launched. The elites never came out. Nobody knew what happened inside, only that they were all dead. Ironically, the ordinary people they abandoned were the ones who survived. 95% of the population died off in the pollution, but the remaining 5% adapted. We were the descendants of those survivors, building a new world on the ruins of the old. Some lucky groups even found buried shelters, using leftover tech to build massive powers like Shugwang City. I know that part well, the officer said. Tianchi Technology, the real masters of Shugwang City, started with a single ruined shelter. But what exactly is the Manga project? Mr. Ng paused. He admitted he didn't know the full details, but he knew the key. A single item called the Manga USB. It contained every scrap of knowledge from the old world. It was the ultimate crystallization of human civilization. The officer gasped. I understood why. If a tiny bit of gene editing tech could build a powerhouse like Tianchi Technology, imagine what the full sum of human knowledge could do. Whoever held that drive could rule the world. Mr. Ng listed the contents like a litany of gods. Gene editing, mechanical armor, artificial intelligence, life engineering, supernatural evolution. I nearly choked. I had to clap a hand over my mouth to keep from gasping along with the officer. My old world had reached that level, but the part about supernatural evolution bothered me. I thought supernaturals only appeared after the catastrophe. The officer asked the same question. Mr. Ng explained that it only took 3 years for the catastrophe to destroy the old world. During that chaos, the first supernaturals appeared. The scientists of that era studied them, and, in just 2.5 years, they cracked the code. They found a way to guarantee a stable awakening. A short silence followed. Inside the tent, the officer was stunned. Outside, my eyes were glowing. I had been jealous of Li Yu's magic hand for a long time. That kind of power didn't cost a lifespan. It only cost mental energy. If I became a supernatural, I wouldn't have to trade my years for strength. And life engineering? That meant extending a human life. More time. I wasn't a hypocrite. I was a collection of desires, and right now, I wanted that USB. It was the legacy of my era. It belonged to me. I changed my plan on the spot. I wasn't going to kill these men. I was going to follow them to Black Mountain. Wealth belongs to the bold, and if I could get my hands on that drive, I'd never have to worry about survival again. I hated wasting time, but using my time stillness to secure the Manga USB wasn't a waste. It was an investment. Instead of risking the journey alone, I would let the army escort me. They needed the wastelanders to scout the mountain, which meant they would protect us until we got there. Inside, the conversation shifted. The officer praised Mr. Ng for his knowledge, calling him a member of the 12 Zodiacs. Then he asked the final question that had been bothering him. If the Manga USB is so important, why aren't we meeting with the main force to help the company seize it? Why are we heading to the Black Mountain Cliffs instead? Mr. Ying's reply was short. The company has other arrangements for the shelter. I don't handle the retrieval of the Manga USB, Mr. Ng said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. I only handle the killing. Inside the tent, the officer gasped. A target worthy of your personal attention? There can't be many people in this world who fit that description. I watched from the shadows as Mr. Ying's cold expression softened slightly. Everyone loves a good flatterer, especially when they hit the mark. It was obvious that Mr. Ng was proud of his reputation. Ng took immense pride in his skills as a sniper. Humph, Mr. Ng grunted. You're not wrong. There aren't many people worth my time. But this target? He's definitely qualified. He paused for a moment before spitting out a name. Yang Jie. What? The officer sounded terrified. Do you mean the tyrant, Yang Jie? The one and only, Mr. Ng replied. Only a man like him is worthy of my black vinyl M300. He stroked the metal case on the table, a flicker of heat in his eyes. The officer didn't share his confidence. The tyrant is one of the 10 kings. For a supernatural that powerful, his mental strength has already surpassed human limits. Any assassination attempt should trigger his danger intuition. I'm afraid. You're right, Mr. Ng interrupted. If one of the 10 kings were that easy to kill, he would have been picked off by other snipers years ago. But the company has a plan. He let out a cold laugh. Not long ago, the tyrant single-handedly destroyed one of the company's satellite cities. He's famous now. Some people are even ranking him at the top of the 10 kings. That battle cost the company dearly, but it also gave us his data. I leaned in, listening intently. The tyrant's mental intuition has a range of 3,000 meters, Mr. Ng explained. If anyone tries to snipe him from within that distance, he'll sense it the moment they pull the trigger. But if I fire from beyond 3,000 meters, he won't feel a thing. Beyond 3,000 meters? The officer was stunned. He knew guns, so he knew exactly what that meant. A sniper who could hit a target from that distance was 1 in a million. Gravity, wind speed, humidity. At that range, a bullet doesn't fly straight. It drifts. A sniper has to calculate every single variable perfectly. I see, the officer gushed. Only you could pull that off. The tyrant's weakness isn't really a weakness for anyone else, because no one else has the skill to exploit it. Mr. Ng actually smiled at that. Exactly. Once I take care of the tyrant, the company will have no problem securing the Panga USB. You know why no one has been able to touch it yet? Why? The officer asked, playing the perfect hype man. Because of the defense systems at Shelter 189, Mr. Ng said. The technology there is far beyond this era. In the entire Northern Alliance, only the tyrant has the power to break through those defenses. He's already nearing Black Mountain. The officer's eyes lit up. So your plan is to let the tyrant break the defenses first, then you kill him? Then the company just walks in and takes the drive? Precisely. Once the tyrant is dead, who else in the Black Mountain region can challenge the company? Brilliant. Simply brilliant, the officer shouted. Mr. Ng, if you kill one of the 10 kings, your rank within the 12 zodiacs will skyrocket. You might even become the leader. I stopped listening after that. The rest was just mindless flattery, the officer brown-nosing so hard it was getting pathetic. The man missed his calling. He should have been a comedian. I knew the plan now. Apocalypse Company wanted to use a monster to kill a monster, but they didn't realize there was a third player in the game. The 10 kings? The 12 zodiacs? To me, they were just targets. The moment I activated my time stillness, they'd all be kneeling at my feet. I turned to leave, carefully scanning the ground. I noticed a dry branch right where I was about to step. If this were a movie, I would have stepped on it and alerted everyone. Luckily, I was smarter than a script. I stepped over it and vanished into the shadows. It took me a while to navigate back through the patrols. When I reached the refugee camp, most people were asleep, but Li Yu's eyes were wide open. He was pacing nervously, looking toward the officer's tent. Where is he? Li Yu whispered to himself. Did he fail? If he got caught, is he selling me out right now? What are you mumbling about? I said, appearing behind him. Li Yu jumped, nearly screaming. He spun around and saw me standing there, completely unharmed. He let out a long breath. I was just praying for you, brother Yi. So what happened? Did you kill him? I looked at him with feigned confusion. Kill him? Kill who? Li Yu blinked. Weren't you going to kill the officer? Stop talking nonsense, I said. Why would I do something so risky? I'm a man of plans, not a thug. I guess you haven't learned my philosophy yet. Let me give you a simpler version. Bully the weak, kneel to the strong, and be as slippery as a greased wall. Got it. Li Yu looked at me like I was a stranger. You're scaring me, man. If you didn't kill anyone, what took you so long? I had to pee, I said simply. For that long. I have very powerful kidneys, I replied. It's a burden, really. I wiped my hands on Li Yu's shoulder as I walked past. I actually had stopped to pee on the way back. Li Yu looked like he was about to blow a fuse. You told me you were going to kill someone, and now you want me to just go back to sleep? How am I supposed to sleep? What are you actually planning? I looked at him. I'd still need his magic hand when we got to the mountain, so I decided to give him a crumb of the truth. I'm going to Black Mountain. What? Li Yu gasped. You want to commit suicide? I kicked him in the shin. I said Black Mountain, not suicide. Don't mix them up. Is there a difference? He groaned, clutching his leg. Shut up and sleep, I said, closing my eyes. Li Yu stared at me for a long time before muttering. I figured it out. You didn't awaken naturally. You must have eaten a poisonous mushroom that rotted your brain. That's the only explanation. The next morning, the sky was barely gray when the soldiers started screaming at us to move. I was yawning, annoyed and tired. I had wasted 30 seconds of my life force yesterday, and it was putting me in a foul mood. The engines of 10 troop carriers roared to life. The soldiers pointed their rifles at us, ushering the crowd forward like cattle. Faster! Move it! Keep up or get left behind. If you fell behind, you died. The soldiers herded us like sheep, driving our ragged group forward with the barrels of their rifles. I stayed in the middle of the crowd, blending in, moving with the flow of tired bodies. By noon, the trucks finally ground to a halt. The soldiers started fires and began cooking their lunch. For us wastelanders, it was a brief moment to breathe. Most of the people around me hadn't had a full meal in days. The long march had drained whatever strength they had left. They collapsed onto the dirt, gasping for air, their eyes fixed on the food in the soldiers' hands. We had fled Dusty Town because of the famine, only to be driven back toward the source of the nightmare. No one had brought supplies. We had nothing. The soldiers ignored the begging stares. They laughed and bragged while eating canned meat. When they were finished, one of them tossed an empty tin into the crowd like a cruel joke. A riot broke out instantly. Men fought and clawed at each other just to lick the grease left inside the can. Look at them, a soldier mocked, his voice full of disgust. Are they even human? They look like wild dogs fighting over scraps. To these city dwellers from the Apocalypse Company, we weren't their kind. We were just animals. Those bastards, Liu muttered. He took an angry bite out of a cockroach protein bar. Being a wastelander himself, he couldn't stand the sight of our people being humiliated. Brother, could you spare a bite? A middle-aged man approached us, his eyes locked onto Liu's protein bar. Liu didn't hesitate. He tossed the man a whole bar, clearly trying to prove he was better than the city soldiers. The man caught it, his eyes lit up, and he began devouring it like a beast. I watched and shook my head. Liu was still too young. The man finished the bar in seconds. He didn't say thank you. Instead, he stared intensely at the tattered sack behind Liu. Is there more? I'm still hungry. Before Liu could answer, others noticed. They swarmed us like locusts, their mud-caked hands reaching out from every direction. Give me some food. I haven't eaten in 3 days. Me too. Give me one. Liu went quiet for a moment, then pulled out a few more bars and handed them out. That was the mistake. It was like poking a hornet's nest. The people who got food wanted more, and the ones who didn't started pushing forward. He has food in the bag. Give it to us. Get back, Liu shouted, his brow furrowed. He had a decent supply, but not enough to feed 100 people. If he kept giving it away, he'd be the one starving by tomorrow. There's no more. Move. But the crowd had turned into a pack of starving wolves. Their eyes glowed with a desperate, greenish light. I saw it. The bag is full, a large man shouted. Hand it over. Are you really going to let us all starve? Hands grabbed for the sack. Liu snapped. Even with his injuries, he was still unawakened. He shoved the nearest men to the ground. Why are you coming at me? The soldiers have the real food. Go ask them. The large man sneered, sounding completely entitled. If the soldier lords would give us food, would we be asking you? Hand it over now, or don't blame us for what happens next. Liu's face went pale with rage. His wounded right hand started to throb. The crowd was getting restless, ready to tear him apart. I finished my own protein bar and slowly stood up. I let a cold, wild smile spread across my face as I scanned the mob. Look at you, Liu. So stingy, I said loudly. Everyone just wants a snack. Why be so difficult? Brother Yi. Liu stared at me, confused. I grabbed the sack from him and stepped in front of the crowd. All right, who wants food? Come and get it. I'm not as selfish as my friend here. The crowd surged forward, looking like they wanted to swallow me whole. The large man used his size to shove his way to the front. That's more like it, kid. Now give it here. I smiled and held out a protein bar. Don't rush. We're all from Dusty Town. We should look out for each other. You're hungry. I have food. It's only fair that you eat mine, right? The man reached for the bar, nodding frantically. Exactly. You've got a good head on your shoulders. It's just a bit of food. No need to make a. He tugged. I didn't let go. His expression shifted to confusion, then annoyance. Kid, what are you doing? Let go. I looked at him with mock surprise, as if I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Wait, you were actually planning to eat this? A bone-chilling scream ripped through the air. I let go of the bar. The large man collapsed into the dirt, clutching his right wrist. It was twisted at an impossible, sickening angle. The crowd froze, the sudden violence snapping them out of their frenzy. I was just joking with you, I said softly. I didn't think you'd actually try to take it. My hand. You bastard. I'll kill you, the man howled. I didn't say a word. I brought my boot down on his shattered wrist and ground my heel into the broken bone. He let out a sound that didn't even seem human anymore. Still want to eat? I asked. No, no, please stop, he sobbed, his face drenched in cold sweat. Was that really necessary? A short man in the crowd shouted, his voice trembling with indignation. He just wanted food. If you didn't want to give it, fine, but why break his hand? I didn't argue. I lunged. I grabbed the speaker by the collar and hauled him out of the crowd like a wet rag. I slammed him into the ground, and, before he could even scream, I stomped directly on his mouth. I felt his teeth shatter under my boot. A surge of violent energy raced through me. I hated people who barked from the safety of a crowd. Talk, I snarled, kicking him again. Say one more word. I kept kicking until his mouth was a red, pulpy mess. The crowd was paralyzed. They watched me, horrified, but not one of them stepped forward to help. What are you looking at? I turned my gaze on them, my eyes wild and predatory. You bunch of idiots. Keep staring, and I'll gouge your eyes out. Get lost. The pressure I radiated was physical. The crowd broke and scattered, running back to their spots in the dirt. No one mentioned food again. Not far away, inside one of the troop carriers, Mr. Ng and a military officer watched the scene with amusement. Savages, the officer remarked. I don't understand why the company bothers with these people. If it were up to me, I'd just wipe them all out. Only by doing this can we restore civilization as quickly as possible. The officer sneered, his voice dripping with arrogance. Mr. Ng looked out the window with a flat, indifferent expression. Even trash has its uses, he said calmly. The company's vision is far beyond anything you could imagine. Yes, of course, the officer replied, his face instantly shifting into a sycophantic grin. Mr. Ng is absolutely right. A soldier hurried over to the car window and saluted. Sir, a wasteland survivor just arrived. He claims to have a major report. The officer frowned, waving his hand impatiently. Tell him to get lost. A wasteland rat having major news? They think seeing a mutated dog in the wild is the event of the century. The soldier hesitated. Sir, he said it concerns a forbidden object. The officer froze. His eyes narrowed. He didn't make a move himself, but glanced toward Mr. Ng. A flicker of genuine interest appeared on Mr. Ying's cold face. He gave a slight, sharp nod. Bring him here. A few moments later, a cowering man was led to the car window by the soldiers. I recognized him immediately. It was one of the men from the East District. Greetings, great officers. My name is Wang. No one cares what your name is, the officer snapped, pulling out a white handkerchief to cover his nose, as if the very air around the man was toxic. What is this news about a forbidden object? If you're lying, I'll put a bullet in your head. The man hit the ground, trembling. I wouldn't dare. I swear it's the truth. In my old home, Dusty Town, there was a forbidden object called bone chills. A guy named Bai got it. I just saw him in the crowd. The officer's eyes lit up with greed. You're saying someone in this camp is carrying a forbidden object? Wait, that's impossible. We searched everyone. No one had weapons. Sir, please believe me, the man cried out. Bai forced that thing to recognize him as its master. Even if he isn't carrying it visibly, he must have it hidden somewhere. Mr. Ng turned his gaze toward the man. His amber, hawk-like eyes flashed with a chilling light. Why didn't you speak up sooner? I didn't mean to hide it, the man stammered, his words tumbling out in a panic. Bai was one of the two who joined us yesterday. He was covered in dirt, and it was dark. I didn't recognize him until he started beating people just now. He was our vice commander back in the East District. I even helped him to the mess hall when he was injured. He promised me a piece of meat back then and never gave it to me. Sir, since I gave you this information, could I have a piece of meat now? The man was clearly terrified out of his mind, babbling whatever came to his head just to survive. Back at our spot, Liu looked miserable. Brother Yi, did I do something wrong? I just thought he looked pitiful. I let out a dry laugh. What? Did a dog eat your conscience and spit it back out? Liu started to snap back, but his shoulders slumped. Maybe I really was wrong. No, I said, my voice cold. You weren't wrong. This era is what's wrong. Liu looked up at me, his eyes wide and full of sudden emotion. He looked like he was about to cry. Brother Yi, you're right. This era is a nightmare. If this were the civilized age, none of this would happen. I raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? I mean, if you want to live well, the first rule is to never admit you're wrong. How could I be wrong? Admitting fault is just mental exhaustion. It's useless. Remember this. If you can blame someone else, do it. If you can't, blame the world. Liu stared at me. I could see his soul processing the absolute nonsense I was feeding him. In the few days he'd known me, I had bombarded his fragile morals with one twisted logic after another. First it was my 16-word mantra, and now this. He probably thought he was a decent person until he met me. Brother Yi, he sighed. I really envy your mental state. By the way, do you have any more of those poisonous mushrooms? I'll poison you, you idiot. I reached for him, and he scrambled away, shielding his right hand. He'd rather lose a limb than hurt that hand again. We messed around for a minute, but then I saw movement near the military vehicles. The officer and Mr. Ng stepped out of the car. Standing beside them was the snitch from the East District. I sighed. What is it, Brother Yi? Liu asked. Get ready to fight, I said. Huh? Again? I didn't answer. I stood up slowly and started walking straight toward the officer and Mr. Ng. The entire camp went silent. Even the people eating stopped, their eyes glued to me. They knew something big was happening. Sir, that's him. That's Bai Yi. The snitch shouted, pointing at me with a shaking finger. The officer smirked, looking me up and down like I was an interesting specimen. Mr. Ng just watched me with those predatory eyes, as if he could see right through my skin. You have a forbidden object, Mr. Ng said. It wasn't a question. I didn't bother lying. I do. I reached into my clothes and pulled out bone chills. The reaction was instant. The sound of sliding bolts and clicking safeties echoed through the air as a dozen soldiers raised their rifles, aiming right at my chest. What are you doing? The officer barked at his men. With Mr. Ng here, do you really think one forbidden object can change anything? Put the guns down. Isn't that right, Mr. Ng? Mr. Ng nodded slightly. He wasn't arrogant. He was just absolutely certain of his own power. To him, a wasteland kid with a cursed gun was no threat at all. You won a 6-round game of Russian roulette to claim bone chills, Mr. Ng said, his voice carrying the practiced weight of a superior. Even for a wasteland dweller, you have some courage. Thank Mr. Ng, the officer hissed at me. To be praised by him is the greatest honor of your life. I didn't say a word. I was busy calculating. I was wondering how long it would take me to kill all 100 soldiers standing in this clearing. Kid, I'm talking to you, the officer growled. It's fine, Mr. Ng said, raising a hand. Wastelanders don't know manners. It's expected. He looked at the revolver in my hand. How is the power? It's out of bullets, I said, casually spinning the cylinder. Give him bullets, Mr. Ng ordered. The soldiers gasped. Giving ammo to a prisoner? But Mr. Ying's confidence was infectious. They obeyed. A soldier stepped forward and handed me a handful of rounds. I didn't hesitate. I loaded the chamber in front of everyone and snapped it shut. Then, I pulled the trigger. Boom! The deafening blast made the refugees and the soldiers jump. Only Mr. Ng and the officer remained perfectly still. A few yards away, a heavy metal crate shattered into pieces. The snitch standing next to Mr. Ng collapsed instantly. A massive, bloody hole gaped in his chest. His eyes were wide, staring at nothing, refusing to close even in death. The surrounding wastelanders gasped in collective shock. I had actually done it. I had murdered someone right in front of a high-ranking officer. Mr. Ng barely glanced at the corpse. A thin, cold smile played on his lips. A snake-level forbidden object, he remarked. The power is decent. If you survive the trip to Black Mountain, I might give you a chance to follow me. He turned to leave, not even waiting for my answer. In his mind, no wastelander would ever refuse such an honor. The officer let out a cold snort. Kid, you're lucky, he said, turning to follow Mr. Ng. The officer didn't even try to seize my weapon. It wasn't that he didn't want it. He just knew how it had to be contained. He wasn't about to perform some barbaric ritual for a gun that drained the user's life. To him, the bone chills was just a payday, and since Mr. Ng had taken an interest in me, he backed off. Did I say you two could leave? My voice rang out, arrogant and wild. The entire clearing went silent. Mr. Ng and the officer both froze, their brows furrowing as they stopped in their tracks. I raised the bone chills, casually pointing the barrel at both of them. Even the dirt and grime on my face couldn't hide the defiance in my eyes. Brother Yi, my dear brother, Liu hissed from the side, his voice trembling. Keep it cool. They aren't even taking your gun. Why push it? I let a savage grin spread across my face. They aren't robbing me, I whispered, but I'm definitely robbing them. Liu stared at me, his mouth hanging open. My sheer audacity seemed to short-circuit his brain. He couldn't understand it. In his world, if the powerful people let you go, you thanked your lucky stars and ran. But I didn't see it that way. I saw two men who thought they were gods throwing a bone on the ground, expecting me to lick it and be grateful. They wanted to act tough in front of me and then just walk away. I had planned to follow the caravan quietly to Black Mountain, but these two pieces of trash decided to get in my face. It was so ridiculous it made me want to laugh. Kid, Mr. Ng said, his voice dropping to a freezing temperature. I thought you were smart. It turns out, you just want to be a corpse. The slight hint of appreciation in his eyes was gone, replaced by total, high-altitude indifference. Mr. Ng, don't waste your breath on this type, the officer said, stepping forward. He's just another wastelander drunk on the power of a forbidden object. Let me handle this. Mr. Ng gave a dismissive hum. Getting his hands dirty with a peasant was beneath him. The officer cracked his neck, the sound of metal gears grinding emitting from his throat. Kid, I've seen a lot of idiots, the officer sneered. But you're a special kind of stupid. You really think a rusty gun makes you invincible? Power is nothing if you can't hit your target. With your speed, I could stand still, and you still wouldn't touch me. Enough talk, Mr. Ng snapped. Kill him so we can move out. Suddenly, Mr. Ying's voice spiked in pitch. His entire body went rigid. His survival instincts were screaming, sending a jolt of pure terror from his spine to his skull. The cold muzzle of a gun was pressed firmly against the back of his head. I was standing right behind him. There's a limit to how much you should talk to yourself, don't you think, Mr. Ng? I whispered into his ear. Impossible. Mr. Ng gasped. His tawny, hawk-like eyes shrunk to pinpricks. He couldn't wrap his head around it. I had been standing yards away just a second ago. His eagle-eye ability gave him elite dynamic vision. Even the legendary 10 Kings shouldn't have been able to move faster than he could see. Was it teleportation? Let go of Mr. Ng, the officer roared. He tried to activate his mechanical limbs, but as he exerted force, he realized with horror that his connection to his arms and legs was gone. His torso began to slide downward. Thud! The officer hit the dirt. His mechanical limbs clattered to the ground like scrap metal, completely severed. What? What did you do to me? The officer screamed, his face twisting in agony and fear. The pristine skin of a city dweller was now smeared with wasteland dust. He had never seen anything so terrifying. He hadn't even seen me move, and yet his cybernetics had been dismantled in an instant. How did you do it? Mr. Ng asked. He had regained his composure quickly, realizing that any sudden move would get his head blown off. He was a gene modder, but he wasn't a frontline brawler. He could dodge bullets, sure, but his real power was as a sniper. With distance and a rifle, he could kill anyone. But with the bone chills at his temple, he was useless. Tell them to drop their guns, I said, staying hidden behind his body. Drop them, all of you, Mr. Ng barked. The soldiers looked at each other, confused and terrified, but they slowly placed their rifles on the ground. Liu, get over here and work, I shouted. Liu stumbled out of the crowd, his eyes fixed on me in total disbelief. He walked over like a man in a dream. Brother Yi, what do you want me to do? He asked blankly. His stunned look annoyed me. I kicked him in the shin. Collect the guns, idiot. Oh, right. Liu scrambled to grab the weapons. After a moment, he looked back at me and gave a shaky thumbs up. Brother Yi, you're a beast. Once the guns were cleared, Mr. Ng spoke up, his voice heavy. I've done what you asked. Now we can talk. You do whatever I tell you to do. I interrupted with a jagged laugh. What are you, my dog? Boom. The bone chills roared. A streak of crimson light flashed, and a blood-red bullet tore through Mr. Ying's right knee. He let out a muffled groan and collapsed to his remaining leg. His face went pale, sweat beading on his forehead, but he gritted his teeth to keep from screaming. That was the difference between a modder and a normal person. A normal man would have lost the leg entirely. Mr. Ying only had a thumb-sized hole through the bone. It was useless for now, but it could be healed. The soldiers surged forward, ready to charge, but Mr. Ying raised a trembling hand to stop them. Don't move, he wheezed. He turned his head painfully to look at me. You didn't kill me. That means you want to negotiate. I was out of line. I didn't know there was a powerful awakened hidden in this group. I admit defeat. Name your price. I looked down at him. Oh, so now you want to negotiate. What happened to giving me a chance to follow you? My eyes were cold, filled with a violent arrogance. I pressed the cold metal of the muzzle firmly against Mr. Ying's forehead. I'll give you a chance now, I whispered. I told him I had never seen one of these high and mighty city lords kowtow to a wasteland dog like me. Make me happy, I said, and maybe I'll let you live. Mr. Ying's face turned a sickly shade of gray. To a man like him, bowing to a wastelander was a fate worse than death. He looked at me with pure hatred, his lips trembling as he started to speak. Death before. Boom. I didn't let him finish. A new hole appeared right between his eyes. Mr. Ying slumped to the ground, his body stiffening before going limp. His yellow-brown eyes were wide, frozen in a look of utter disbelief. He never imagined I would actually pull the trigger. You killed him. You actually killed Mr. Ying. The officer on the ground screamed. His voice was distorted, sounding like a crushed insect. Do you have any idea what you've done? He was one of the 12 Zodiacs. The company will never let you go. I walked over and delivered a heavy kick to his face. His nose shattered, spraying blood across the dirt. I leaned down, my shadow looming over him. Are you naturally this stupid, or do you just practice? I asked. I grabbed him by the hair, forcing him to look at me. You're seconds away from death, and you're still trying to threaten me? I'm not just killing him. I'm killing you too. The officer finally snapped out of his delusion. Cold sweat poured down his face. No, wait. You can't kill me. If I die, the company. I lost my patience and kicked him again, knocking his front teeth straight out of his mouth. Do you have anything else to say? If not, hurry up and die. Don't kill me. Please, he shrieked, his voice muffled by blood. I'll do anything. I'll crawl, I'll bow, just let me live. He had no limbs left to move, so he used his neck and stomach muscles to heave his body upward. Over and over, he slammed his forehead into the dirt, kowtowing to me in a desperate rhythm. I threw my head back and laughed. I turned to the crowd of wastelanders, who were standing there like statues. Look at him, I shouted. See this? This is the great lord from Shuguang City you're all so afraid of. He's begging a wastelander for his life. The clearing was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Only my jagged laughter echoed through the wind. Liu stared at the officer's bloody head hitting the ground, then at Mr. Ying's corpse. He swallowed hard, his eyes bulging. It all happened too fast. It felt like a fever dream. To him, the gap between a city person and a wastelander was an unbridgeable chasm. He couldn't wrap his head around the fact that such a powerful figure could be snuffed out so casually. Brother Yi, the big shot, he's really dead? Liu whispered. I sighed. Yeah, who would have thought he was alive just a minute ago? I grinned at him, feeling a surge of heat in my chest. Don't worry, he didn't die for nothing. Mr. Ying's death was useful. The bone chills pulsed, drinking in his essence. One city official was worth at least 10 mutated birds. I felt my physical strength tick upward, my muscles tightening with new power. The officer was still banging his head against the ground, sobbing for mercy. I looked past him at the soldiers standing nearby. They were restless, their fingers twitching on their triggers. I needed to get to Black Mountain, and I needed the army's transport to do it. Threatening this pathetic officer was the only way to make them move.